The full-time Mage. The extreme lightning. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Heavenly Fire. In front of them was the land, where a large number of white sand demon soldiers were hidden underground. This was also the most difficult land for them to cross on their way to the burning plain. At first, Emofan, Zaoman, and Zhang Xiaohao were all wondering what demons were there. After a small test proposed by Lingling, they were all dumbfounded. They saw that the underground was full of white sand demon soldiers, which was so terrifying. Tang Mao didn't care about it. After all, they were all warrior level creatures. As long as he froze the ground, they would be absolutely safe if they rushed over quickly. However, with Yi Xingshi's mind system, she naturally came first. After all, if someone's speed was not enough, it would be really troublesome. It was not difficult to kill the white sand demon soldiers in seconds, but there were too many of them. After a night's rest, the group of 7 people, comforted by Yi Xingshi's mind system, quickly passed half of the journey safely. Naturally, there were some mistakes during the period, but the problems were not serious, and the few people were able to escape danger. When there was only 1 kilometer left, Xingsha finally couldn't hold on any longer. Seeing this scene, Tang Mao was the first to react. A thick layer of ice instantly froze the ground. The people around him didn't even see Tang Mao drawing the star map before they saw the ground had frozen instantly. Run! Tang Mao shouted after the ground froze. Hearing this, the people accelerated and ran towards the outside of the sand river. After Tang Mao continued for more than 10 minutes, he heard Emofan, who was behind the hall, shouting, "Brother, run." Hearing this, Tang Mao jumped up and summoned the snow girl to merge into his body. Flying in the air, although there were many white sand monster soldiers on the ground, they had no means of attack. Tang Mao flew over here safely, crossed the sand river safely, and faced a piece of land that looked like it had been burned red by fire. This is the northern corner of the burning plain, a special pure land that still has various mysteries to this day, and there are not many human footprints. After Tang Mao came over, he saw that except for Lingling and Yi Xingsha, everyone else was lying on the ground gasping for breath. Although there was no battle just now, the consumption of running wildly was also huge. Finally past this divided land. Even some hunters rarely set foot here. This time, we must have a lot of harvest. Lingling looked around and said in a low voice, "The area of the north corner of burning plain is difficult to survey for the time being, and according to the information that Emofan paid a lot of money for, Yanji's haunt is in the middle." With the target place, after resting for a while, they continued on their way. The north corner of burning plain is a basin as a whole. Although the land is flat at first glance, the terrain has been explored by predecessors, so the more you walk to the middle of the north corner of burning plain, the lower the terrain is. The entire north corner of burning plain is like a fire basin. The surrounding soil and gravel are all brown red, and it is said that the most central area of the north corner of burning plain is a land burning with flames. The flames burn from the cracked ground. At first glance, it looked like red wheat seedlings standing scattered here and there. People who were not able to resist the flames could not walk in that area. After entering here, Emofan carried Yi Xingsha on his back, while Tang Mao held Lingling in his arms. In fact, Tang Mao and Emofan both had summoned beasts, but they were both happy to do this kind of good job. Although the 2 girls knew that the 2 had ulterior motives, they did not refuse. On the way, Emofan and the others were not focused on Yanji. The rich fire element here must have some fire spirits. Along the way, with Lingling's various hints, Yanji, who originally had little hope, could not help but have some hope. After all, under the guidance of this professional girl, their hope was getting bigger and bigger. Just after walking for a while, they encountered a fire disaster as expected. Under the baptism of the fire disaster, even the monsters would run away. Obviously, under the baptism of the heavenly disaster, even the monsters could not resist it at all. In front of the destructive power of nature, they are just younger brothers. Everyone ran all the way down, and finally saw the sand of the Shuang River. They originally thought that it would not be so dangerous after crossing the Shuang River. Who knew that this mysterious north corner of the burning plain was even more unwelcoming to outsiders than the Shuang River, and it was directly wrathful. Fortunately, everyone ran to a fireproof area and avoided the first boiling magma. After avoiding the first fire disaster, they would either continue to rush forward or retreat. Although they no longer had the intention to look for Yanji, when they thought that the north corner of the burning plain had just experienced a fire disaster, they thought that there was only one team of them in this huge Chinese fire basin. Wouldn't this fertile land be left for them to cultivate? In addition, after Zhao Manan's sister Chen Ying insisted that there would be no more fire disasters here, everyone was moved again. From beginning to end, Tang Mao didn't have too many ideas. In fact, for him, as long as it was not a disaster of nature, then everything was not a problem. After all, he could not resist the destructive power of nature. Of course, Chen Ying's secrets were finally revealed. She couldn't hide them after all. After all, not only Tang Mao knew clearly, but Yi Xingxia, who majored in the Department of Psychology, also noticed that something was wrong with her. Then, after she confessed, they followed Chen Ying to make away. According to the topography described by Chen Ying's mother, a group of people arrived at the foot of a flat-topped mountain. Chen Ying said that his mother had always lived near this mountain. Tang Mao vaguely felt that something was wrong in his memory. However, it had been more than 20 years, so how could he remember it clearly? And just when they climbed a mountain, magma suddenly flowed out. The sudden appearance of magma made everyone panic. Tang Mao looked at Ling Ling beside him and said, "Follow me closely." Ling Ling nodded. She knew that Tang Mao had the ability to fly. Asking her to follow closely was nothing more than taking her to fly when there was no way to escape. As for the others, Tang Mao might look helpless. However, he still tried his best. The absolute 0 degree of the ice field was directly exerted to the extreme, and an ice wall emerged. The magma that rushed in instantly hit the ice wall. Boom. Squeak squeak, hurry up and leave, I can't hold on for much longer. After Tang Mao held onto the magma, he looked at the few people and shouted. Hearing this, the few people dared not hesitate, and turned around to run for their lives. After Tang Mao held on for 2 minutes, the moment he could no longer hold on, he summoned the snow girl, and at the same time, he jumped up holding Ling Ling, and the magma instantly gushed down. Chapter 127 Little Yanji, Part 1, Extra Update. After resisting a wave of magma, Tang Mao held Ling Ling, and flew away to the sky. The magma had already flowed down, and it was unknown whether Mo Fan and the others were dead or alive, but no matter what, Tang Mao had done his best. Little lolly Ling Ling saw Tang Mao staring down, thinking that he was worried about the lives of others, so she persuaded him, natural disasters are not something that humans can resist. You have done a good job. They can only leave it to fate now. Tang Mao shook his head and said, I'm not worried about them, but I just sensed a strong fire element energy. Ling Ling's mouth twitched slightly, and she was worried too much. Then let's go and see. However, Ling Ling was still very interested in what Tang Mao said. In fact, it was not Tang Mao who felt the strong fire element, but the snow girl in her body. Although she didn't like this kind of burning place, she told Tang Mao that she felt the same elemental dulling as him. And there is one more thing. That is, the elemental darlings between heaven and earth can share a contract. In other words, as long as the other party is a heaven-sent elemental darling, he can still make another contract. After hearing the news, Tang Mao was a little moved. After all, although he didn't have the fire element, Tang Yu's fourth element was summoning. As long as he contracted with Yanji, he couldn't use it in the future, but he could still give it to Tang Yu. As long as he treated her like a little girl, who would be different? Tang Mao immediately reminded Ling Ling, hold on tight. The moment he finished speaking, Tang Mao took Ling Ling and flew to the place where he felt the breath of the element. The scorching sun was hanging high in the sky, just in the center of the northern corner of the burning plain, which was like a brazier. The only mountain standing in the northern corner of the burning plain was the Huazu mountain, which was the closest to the sun. There were almost no living creatures on the top of the mountain. Some plants that needed to be watered by the flames grew vigorously, covering the land on the flat-topped mountain in patches. They were fiery red, like a dense blanket of maple leaves, and they were magnificent. Not only was the scenery here beautiful, but there was also a fiery red figure with a bit of grace floating there. After Tang Mao saw the other party, he hugged Ling Ling and jumped down. Ling Ling was panicking, because she had never seen this bright red humanoid object before. It seemed that it saw them coming down, and it actually came over. Moreover, it moved very strangely, with its toes slightly raised, its legs kept suspended, and it floated over like a ghost from between several fire cloud trees that were more than 10 meters high. After the other party appeared, the snow girl left Tang Mao's body and floated out. When it saw the snow girl, the red humanoid object was stunned. Ring. Then, she suddenly spoke, but the language was a little difficult for people to understand. The snow girl also responded after the other party spoke. Then the two elemental pets started chatting. Tang Mao had no interest in this, but Ling Ling looked curious. In theory, ice and fire are incompatible, right? Shouldn't they fight when they meet? Why doesn't it seem to be the case now? And they are chatting? After Ling Ling was puzzled for a long time, she said, Tang Mao, what are they talking about? Although Tang Mao could understand what the snow girl said, it was her unique that could make it work. Otherwise, how would he know what they were talking about? Shaking his head, Tang Mao said helplessly, how would I know what they were talking about? I don't understand animal language. Ling Ling pouted and said dissatisfiedly, isn't she your contracted beast? Tang Mao shrugged and said helplessly, but, with the speed at which she speaks now, do you think I can understand? Just as the two were talking nonsense, the snow girl floated back to Tang Mao's side. The snow girl told Tang Mao that the person in front of him was a person who was rescued by the old Yanji and became the new guardian. The current Yanji has not been born yet, but this time the fire of the heavenly tribulation has descended. Yanji is about to break out of the shell. And she herself and the guardian of Yanji had a conversation about letting her hand Yanji over to Tang Mao to raise, and she had already made it clear. Hearing this, Tang Mao was a little bit unbelievable and said, is it that easy? The little snow girl pouted and looked at Tang Mao, as if she was a little dissatisfied because of his distrust. Tang Mao smiled awkwardly and said helplessly, my dear daughter, daddy doesn't disbelieve you, but, then, Tang Mao's voice became softer. It's just that daddy can't believe that she asked me to contract Yanji like this. The snow girl hummed for a while, and after listening to Tang Mao's explanation, she told Tang Mao that she was willing to follow. So why would a person who protects Yanji not want Yanji to follow? In fact, the main reason is that the woman who was rescued is not sure whether she can protect Yanji well. Especially after this heavenly tribulation, it will definitely attract many powerful hunters to come here to look for treasures. In addition, the snow girl said that she was raised to the growth stage in just a few years, which shows that Tang Mao is really good to her. Then, adding another Yanji is not a problem. The most important thing is that Tang Mao got Yanji, so she doesn't have to worry about someone coming to seek her. After all, this is the last Yanji in the world, and finding a good home for her is the biggest wish of this woman. Of course, this was also thanks to the help of the snow girl, who was also the darling of the element, in the negotiation. Otherwise, even if Tang Mao was so gifted, this woman would not hand over Yanji. After all, she would also be afraid that the other party would really treat Yanji well. What if she sold it for a search? She was a human being after all, and she still understood some greedy people. After a while, the flame witch brought Tang Mao, the snow girl, and Ling Ling to a place. Then she picked the fire tribulation fruit and held it in her hand. With a hint of reluctance and a hint of tenderness, she turned into a breath of green air on her lips and blew softly on the fire tribulation fruit. As she blew it out in one breath, Tang Mao clearly felt that she consumed a lot of energy. At the same time, the extremely hard shell of the fire tribulation fruit suddenly cracked, and then a small piece of it bounced up slightly and fell to the ground. Inside the shell, a small mini arm stretched out. The guy inside obviously wanted to see the outside world. The arm kept grabbing and trying to smash all the shells that blocked it. The little arm may not be as big as one of Tang Mao's fingers, but it is in the form of flames, as weak as a candle flame. And it feels like a slightly heavier breath can blow it out. After a moment, the little guy inside broke out of the shell. This special life with a faint little flame forming the entire exquisite baby body seemed to be very energetic. After it broke out of the shell, it picked up the fragments of the fire disaster fruit and started to gnaw on it like a little squirrel. Little arms, legs, and a round little body, delicate and miniature like a porcelain doll, just like the snow girl I first met that year. However, the difference between the two elemental darlings is that one is covered with ice and the other is covered with flames. Yanji was born on the giant star language tree in a basin of fire in this vast desert. The world is so big and everything is flourishing, but only they slightly violate the laws of natural breeding and use a special way of inheritance. They are also the purest fairies who came to the world like this, just like the snow girl. They are all darlings of nature. PS. Please vote for the monthly ticket. Please reward. Please subscribe. Chapter 128 Little Yanji, Part 2. After eating her shell, the little flame princess happily jumped around the snow girl. Its mother, the woman who was rescued by the old flame princess and turned into the flame witch, looked at the little flame princess quietly. Her eyes were full of reluctance, but she was already the last flame princess in the world. This human being could let the ice snow girl survive well, so naturally he would not treat the flame princess badly. Ring the flame witch didn't know what to communicate with the snow girl. The snow girl came to Tangmao with the little flame princess. To be honest, Tangmao was a little dumbfounded that flame princess had been sticking to the snow girl, who had a counter attribute to her since birth. Could it be that she didn't know how to resist this ice attribute? Ying being compared to the little flame princess who kept sticking to the snow girl. The snow girl was full of rejection. The little arrogant look on her face seemed to dislike this stinky sister. After coming over, the little snow girl asked Tangmao to subdue the flame princess. Tangmao did not refuse and drew the summoning star map. After completing the summoning contract map, Tangmao branded the contract mark on the sleeping little Yanji. Little Yanji seemed to be a little resistant to this, pouting her little mouth, looking at the snow girl like a pitiful little girl. Another typical Yinging monster. Yinging the snow girl seemed to be telling her that this was also her father. If you want to play with your sister, you have to complete the contract, otherwise she won't play with her. Immediately, the slight repulsion dissipated in an instant. After the contract was completed, Zhao Yanji circled around Tangmao for a few circles, and then climbed onto Tangmao's shoulder. Maybe she was tired. She fell asleep lying there, with a lazy and cute look of "don't wake me up until it's time to eat." After contracting Zhao Yanji, Tangmao found that his second contract was still empty. In other words, the eldest girl did not lie to him. Who would have thought that he and Emofan, the little brother, came to look for the flame witch, but ended up in his hands. This is very nice. Moreover, with the conversation between the snow girl and the woman in front of him just now, he also thought of one thing. That is, this woman seems to be the mother of the girl who came with them. Of course, in order to confirm it, Tangmao also asked the snow girl to ask. Sure enough, when the snow girl said that there was another girl named Chenang in their team, the flame witch was really excited. After another round of communication and the snow girl's report and some of his own fragmentary memories, Tangmao also completely understood the whole story. Tangmao thought to himself, it seems that I'm not wrong. After thinking about it, Tangmao looked at Lingling and said, Lingling, this flame witch, although she is an old flame witch, she is actually a human. At this time, Lingling was looking at a little flame witch on Tangmao's shoulder and a little lolly snow girl beside her, and she was envious. You know, it is the dream of many summoners to be favored by the darling of the element. However, thousands of years have passed since ancient times. It is already a great thing to be favored by an elemental pet. What's more, there are two. Tangmao's luck is against the sky. Just when she was envious, she heard Tangmao's call. Hearing this, Lingling paused. Then she wondered, human? How is it possible? No matter how she looked at it, Lingling didn't think that the guy in front of her would be a person. Tangmao told Lingling what the snow girl had just told her. After learning the cause and effect, Lingling held her chin with her little hand and thought for a while before saying, so what you mean is that Chen Ying's current mother is actually the person her real mother saved back then? Tang Mao nodded and then said, if I'm not mistaken, Chen Ying's coming here should be planned, and her fake mother should have come with her. Ling Ling clenched her fists tightly. After learning the cause and effect of the matter, she was also very angry. Because all this has proved that Chen Ying's fake mother is such a crazy, ungrateful, vicious, and cruel scum. Ling Ling thought of the previous things again and sighed, but now they don't know whether they are alive or dead. What are we waiting for here? Chen Ying's fake mother has survived here, and she naturally knows something about the place where she can save her life. So, don't worry. Before Chen Ying helps her get the fire tribulation fruit, nothing will happen at all. Thinking of the various introductions of Chen Ying before, it is obvious that she has been indoctrinated since she was a child. It's rare that Tang Mao has someone she wants to kill immediately for the first time. Let the daughter of the person who saved her come to harm her? It's worse than pigs and dogs. Ling, just as the two were talking, the fire witch suddenly spoke. Tang Mao looked at the snow girl, who pouted her little mouth and translated. It must be said that after having a big daughter, there is no need to worry about not having a tool person when going out. From the translation of the little snow girl, Tang Mao learned that there were a group of humans in the fire cloud forest. It seemed that they were attacked by demons. Because she had just awakened the flame princess, her strength was a little weak, so she made a sound to ask Tang Mao to save people. Of course, the main reason was that the flame witch could feel that Tang Mao's magic power was very strong. In addition, with the snow girl, it was not difficult to save people. Tang Mao was not interested in meddling in other people's business, but when he thought that it might be Mo Fan and his friends, he felt that he should save them. After all, the news about Flame Princess was first obtained by others. Although he also knew about Flame Princess, he didn't care about it at all. After he had the snow girl and Tang Yu didn't awaken the fire element. Who would have thought that he, who was supposed to be training his younger brother, would get an extra Flame Princess in the end? So, if it was really them below, they should be saved. Ling Ling, wait for me here obediently. After telling Ling Ling, Tang Mao put the little flame princess back into the contract space to rest. After he merged with the snow girl, he flew towards the fire cloud forest below. After a while, Tang Mao arrived above the fire cloud forest. However, due to the dense trees here, he could only look for it below. He dissolved his fusion and stepped into the forest. Because the leaves of the fire cloud tree here like the scorching sun the most, including the heat in the air, they will also be absorbed by them and turned into nutrients for the whole tree, so the heat waves emitted are naturally scorching. The snow girl doesn't like this kind of place. Fortunately, Tang Mao's body is covered with a thin layer of ice, which makes it easier for one person and one elemental pet. However, after coming down, Tang Mao found that the red leaves all over the ground made it impossible to tell the directions. Exclamation mark. Chapter 129, Thunder. Then Tang Mao could only choose to walk for a while and fly for a while. There were too many movements here, and it was really hard to find people for a while. After finding a direction, Tang Mao began to look for it. Not to mention, he might have been infected with the aura of walking dead people. Along the way, he had found 2 bodies of military magicians. After seeing these bodies, Tang Mao sped up. He had no way to save the dead, nor did he do some useless self-blame. As a magician, when awakening magic and stepping out of the Anji, I think everyone has the same awakening in their hearts. Although no one wants to die in front of thousands of demons, this is not something that can be done. Magic vine strangle the body. Just as Tang Mao accelerated to chase ahead, a woman's cold voice suddenly came from the woods, and Tang Mao was slightly stunned. Just looking at this corpse in a daze, I didn't expect to be attacked by someone. However, this little vine is nothing in front of him. Before the encirclement was formed, it was directly frozen by Tang Mao's powerful ice attribute, and then it was shattered into pieces with a snap. Come out. After resolving the opponent's attack, Tang Mao looked at the person hiding over there and said in a calm voice. Behind the tree not far away, a tall and straight woman with shoulder-length yellow hair came out. At this time, she was surprised, because Tang Mao didn't seem to draw a star map when he cracked her attack. Question mark? When Tang Mao looked at this hawk-nosed woman with a military medal on her chest, she was not Emo fan and others, and thought to himself, sure enough, this Halo thing can really save lives. Tangmao looked at the woman in front of him, and he had to say that this girl was great. From the hairstyle to the straight, full, and slender jade legs, Tangmao had only one thought in his mind, that is, really nice, perfect. This woman is outstanding in height. Although she is not as tall as Tangmao, this woman is only 10 centimeters shorter than him. You know, Tangmao is nearly 1.9 meters tall. With that cold and handsome face, when she looked down at some little boys, she might have a heroic spirit and majesty, making people willing to submit. When facing little girls, she was even more intoxicating, making girls doubt their own orientation. Her nose was a rare exquisite hooked nose, paired with shiny and narrow single eyelids. Well, in short, the neutral beauty of this female officer was really full of electricity, with a kind of handsomeness and pride that made people fall. Nanju was a little unhappy with Tangmao's unscrupulous eyes. In her heart, she even gave him the title of lecher. At this time, after appreciating her beauty, Tangmao said in a light voice, give up your mission and follow me, you will be in trouble. Otherwise, with your strength, if you continue to turn around here, you will die. Nanju still wanted to talk about her mission, but after seeing that Tangmao no longer had the SP look before, but looked like she was going to die, she didn't say anything after all. In addition, several of her teammates had died without her noticing, so she had no choice but to compromise. She looked at Tangmao, can you take us out of here safely? Tangmao nodded, and immediately led them to the place where the fire witch was. After watching Tangmao lead them deeper, Nanju asked in confusion, aren't you taking us away? Tangmao said without turning his head, before taking you away, there are still some things to deal with. Just follow closely, and I'll make sure you're safe. Nanju was very unhappy with Tangmao's arrogant attitude, but she couldn't see through this man at all. She could only endure her dissatisfaction in her heart. After a while, on a hillside, the giant star language tree still stood proudly at the highest point of this desert, accompanied by the starry sky and the scorching sun. And there, in addition to Lingling and the Fire Witch, there were also Emofan, Zao Manan and others. In addition, there were some other people here. Tangmao came to the middle of the few people in a few steps. When Lingling saw Tangmao coming, she was delighted. Then he glanced at Chen Ying, pointed at the woman wrapped in white cloth and said, Chen Ying, this woman is not your mother, the flame witch behind me is. Then, Lingling recounted what happened just now. Chen Ying was stunned when she heard this, and even Zhao Yulin who came here with her was stunned. In fact, it was not just them, but Emofan, Xingxia and others who came with them were all full of confusion. They were not the ones who persuaded Lingling. Was this flame witch dangerous? Why is it that now Lingling said that Chen Ying's mother has a problem? This thunder, rumble. While they were still there, Tangmao had already started to draw magic. Obviously, he was ready to take action directly. The moment Emofan and Zhao Manan saw Tangmao drawing magic, they pulled Li Xingxia and Chen Ying and dodged to the side. They didn't think that Tangmao was the kind of person who would joke. Similarly, Zhang Xiaohao and Zhao Linai also retreated to the side. Boom. Tangmao gave them a look that said you're smart when they retreated. Then a thunderbolt came down directly. Seeing this scene, Chen Ying, who was being pulled, wanted to save people, because she couldn't believe Tangmao's one-sided words and doubt her mother. But Chen Ying didn't believe it. Zhao Manan didn't doubt what Tangmao said at all. After all, the two of them had experienced life and death together. The woman wrapped in white cloth suddenly moved at the moment when the thunderbolt fell, just when everyone thought she was going to die. Her speed was obviously not like that of a seriously injured person. Boom boom boom. After a burst of explosions, Tangmao sneered, what, you vicious woman, you don't pretend anymore? Damn bastard, you dare to ruin my good things, you are looking for death. The ghost woman looked at Tangmao and said coldly. In fact, even if she had resisted that thunderbolt just now, she would not die. But she didn't do it, for no other reason. Because she found that the flame witch seemed to be seriously injured. Since the fire witch was already seriously injured, what else could she hide? Zhao Yulin was the only high-level mage here, so what else could she pretend to be? With her means, it was not difficult to deal with these people. Purple Sky Domain. Boom boom. Just when she was daydreaming, Tang Mao suddenly released her thunder domain. The moment the domain was opened, thunder was everywhere around her, and Tang Mao's momentum became dozens of times stronger in an instant. Both Xiao Yulin and the ghost woman were shocked. Chapter 130 Killing the Ghost Woman. When Tang Mao came up, a bolt of lightning descended. Although the ghost woman also felt the power, she was not afraid. After all, Tang Mao was still a mid-level mage. But he didn't expect that after he revealed his identity, his momentum suddenly exploded. Moreover, this seems to be the realm of Soul Seed level, right? Question mark? Soul Seed realm. Except for a few people who were familiar with Tang Mao, the others were shocked when they saw this scene. Just when Tang Mao was about to draw the star map and attack again, the ghost woman also made a move. First, she interfered with Tang Mao with the mind system, and then suddenly used the curse system. Fortunately, Tang Mao had a magic weapon given by Dean Zhao, which blocked this wave of mind shock and successfully avoided the curse shock that was hard to defend against. She is a ghost woman. The moment the female officer Nanju saw her attack, she reacted immediately, staring at the white cloth man, and said coldly, "The ghost woman that our military still has on the wanted list must be you, the shame of the Dunhuang military region." The ghost woman laughed shrilly when she heard this. She was very surprised that someone had exposed her true identity, which was more than 10 years ago. It turns out that someone still remembers me. It's worth it that I'm still alive with this burnt corpse. Nanju looked at everyone and said she was the crazy demon military shame that our Dunhuang military had been wanted for more than 10 years. We thought she was dead, but we didn't expect that she was alive under another identity. Alive. Hearing this, Tang Mao looked at the other party with a mocking expression and said, her fate was already decided the moment I attacked. Purple sky. Thunderbolt. Crazy dance. The moment Tang Mao finished speaking, a mid-level magic was directly blasted out. Boom boom boom. Seeing that Tang Mao was clearly hit by her mind magic, but he was still able to attack, and it was an intermediate magic comparable to a high level one, the ghost woman was stunned. Boom. Zilla. After a bang, the sound of thunder began to crackle continuously. Tang Mao did not care whether she was still alive or not. The thunder dissipated, and a gloomy and cold breath suddenly emerged. Absolute zero. After Tang Mao shouted lightly, a gloomy breath began to spread. Ice crystal spear. Then, the ice attribute energy turned into a spear, and stabbed straight at the ghost woman. Although the thunder just now was fierce, it was still an intermediate magic after all. Under the defense of the magic tool, the ghost woman could not die. At most, her body was paralyzed. But, although she could not die, the paralysis of thunder would definitely make her unable to move at all. The ice crystal spear stabbed over in an instant. Puchy. The charge of this spear was unstoppable and directly shattered her armor magic tool. A higher level mage died just like that, which shocked Nanju and his group, as well as Cheniying and her father. After dealing with the ghost woman, Tang Mao looked at Cheniying and said, "Do you understand now?" Cheniying had not yet recovered from Tang Mao's destruction magic. She nodded subconsciously and looked back at the flame witch. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Even Xiao Yulin believed what Ling Ling said, but he had never seen a young man as irritable as Tang Mao. He took action before he was sure of the situation. Moreover, his strength was so strong. When the mother and daughter recognized each other, Mo Fan came to Tang Mao and said with a playful smile, "Brother, can you help ask the flame witch, Yanji, about her whereabouts?" Originally, he had given up on Yanji after encountering this heavenly tribulation. However, seeing this situation now, he really had some little ideas again. Tang Mao turned around and said, "Have you gained anything from running for your life so far?" Yes. Mo Fan smiled and said without hiding anything, "When I came here before, I found a spiritual level fire seed and some materials for making high level magic weapons." Tang Mao nodded and said, "Then don't think about Yanji." Ah. Mo Fan scratched his head in confusion and then said with some regret, "Is the news false?" "That's not the case. The news is true." Tang Mao shook his head, then called out Yanji and said, "It's just that she was given to me by the fire witch. The fire tribulation fruit that Cheniying mentioned before is little Yanji." Emo fan was slightly stunned, but he was not too sad. After all, the reward he got in exchange for his 9 million was not small, especially when he got a spiritual fire seed. He immediately said, "Congratulations, big brother." Tangmao looked at Emo fan with a smile, and then said, "Are you dissatisfied?" "No." Emo fan shook his head, and then said with a dog-licking look, "Big brother, what you got is no different from what I got. Without Yanji, I can find someone else." Tangmao patted his shoulder and said, "Well, you have a good attitude. In the future big brother will take you to act cool and fly." Emo fan muttered with a twitch of the corner of his mouth, "Just don't sell me out when the time comes." Tangmao's mental power was strong, so he naturally heard what he said clearly. However, Tangmao didn't say anything or do anything. After all, it's not impossible to trick Emo fan. After Emo fan muttered a few words, he chased Tangmao again and asked, "Boss, can you tell me what your relationship with Muningsu is now?" "More than friends, but not emotional." Emo fan felt bitter in his heart, because from this sentence, he would have a competitor who was so powerful that he couldn't breathe. Moreover, the relationship between Muningsu and him reached the 0 point after the incident of the deserted city. At this time, Zhao Yulin came over, looked at Tangmao and said, "Thank you for this time, little brother. You are welcome to visit my Zhao family when you have time in the future." Tangmao nodded and said a few polite words. His gain this time was already the biggest, and he was just simply unhappy with the ghost woman. However, Zhao Yulin and his daughter and the flame witch still looked grateful. In this regard, he naturally accepted it with pleasure. Speaking of it, Chennai is not bad. It would be even better if she could be his lover. Of course, this is just a thought. Then everyone prepared to return. Although Nanju and his group did not get anything on this trip, they at least solved the ghost woman. Chennai wanted to go back to the Zhao family with her mother, but was rejected by the flame witch. How could she go back to the Zhao family in her current state? Even if Zhao Yulin asked her to go back, she was still rejected. After all, she is no longer a human being. How can she return to the human world? Chapter 131 Hunting the White Sand Demon Soldiers. No matter how Zhao Yulin and his daughter persuaded, the flame witch said that she had adapted to life here. Although there was no Yanji to protect her, she could still save some humans here. In the end, they had to give up. Before everyone returned, Chennai said that she wanted to stay here with her mother, and Tangmao did not choose to go with her. The rest of the people left with Zhao Yulin. Lingling wanted to stay here, but was strongly rejected by Tangmao. There was no other reason. Tangmao was going to hunt monsters here, and Lingling couldn't follow him no matter what. Moreover, the treasures on this burning plain have not been explored by anyone yet. Tangmao couldn't miss it. Originally, he could have been free, but who would have thought that by chance, he would have another daughter? The milk powder money for the little Yanji was no less than that for the snow girl. Tangmao first searched for spirit seeds and fragments on this burning plain. This land full of gold is really not just talk. Even the fire spirit seeds, Tangmao found 2 on the first day. On the second day, a lot of rare fire attribute materials were also collected. Although the harvest from the third day was not small, Tangmao got it through fighting. But compared with the harvest of the previous 2 days, it was obviously much worse. After resting for 2 days, when Tangmao came to the edge of the Shuang River, he directly let the snow girl disintegrate, and in an instant he stepped into the area where the white sand monster soldiers were. Today, he is not going to hunt for treasures. What he has collected in the past few days is already a considerable income. Moreover, fighting is the most important thing now. He has not yet figured out the threshold of the space system. Of course, the most important thing is that he is poor, and hunting monsters makes money. Bang, bang. After Tangmao jumped down, there were bursts of loud noises from the white mud and sand underground. At this quiet moment, it was simply the bell of death ringing. The white sand and dust flew up all of a sudden, as if countless dragons were tumbling in the entire white sand river, and the waves were so high that they were about to cover the sky. A cold and eerie breath swept over, and the evil ghosts of the King of Hell came out of the soil. One by one, the white sand giants, each up to 5 meters in size, stood up from the white sand. Tangmao was not here to watch them show off. and thunder was all over his body. Zilla. Purple sky domain. Boom boom. After the white sand demon soldiers emerged one by one, Tangmao directly opened the thunder domain. The white sand demon soldiers nearby were directly shattered by the thunder when the thunder in the domain descended. Less than a minute after the domain was opened, there was no white sand demon soldier around. The white sand demon soldiers who had just stood next to them saw this scene, and their eyes were filled with hostility. What they hated most when they were sleeping here was the disturbance of other creatures. But Tangmao in front of him was not just a simple disturbance. Suddenly, all the white sand demon soldiers' pupils turned red, and they roared like thunder. They seemed to be determined not to stop until Tangmao was torn into pieces. The white sand demon soldiers were group creatures, and even when they fought in groups. However, before they could make a move, Tangmao had already made a move. Thunder Seal. Ice Vine. Telekinesis. Ice Lock. Thunderbolt. The white sand demon soldiers kept rushing towards Tangmao, but the magic turrets were not called for nothing. Tangmao used the elementary and intermediate skills continuously. With his speed, as long as it was not a high level magic, he could kill the white sand demon soldiers before they got close. Even if a few rushed over, he still had the cloud stepping boots and the black snake magic armor. Hoo. After killing nearly 1,000 white sand demon soldiers, Tangmao found that the white sand demon soldiers were still rushing over. At this time, his magic power was not much, and even the thunder magic power was not enough for a high level magic. However, it was not easy to run now, because the white sand demon soldiers surrounded him. If it were not for the snow girl and the shadow demon tiger, he would have been injured, even if he did not die. Girl, Zhao Hei, hold on for a while, I will give them a big one. He could not hold on any longer. If he held on any longer, it would not end well for him. Roar. HMM. After hearing what Tangmao said, the snow girl and the shadow demon tiger responded one after another, and then came to his left and right guards. With the two of them dealing with the white sand demon soldiers, Tangmao also had time to breathe and began to connect the constellations. Although his speed of connecting the star map has surpassed many mid-level mages, the constellations are more complicated after all. The speed of releasing is also much slower. Although most of the white sand demon soldiers are at the level of generals, they are not afraid of the two commanders of the snow girl and the shadow demon tiger. They still swarmed up like a group of fools. Roar. Zhao Hei killed one immediately after catching one. However, if it is not at night, or if it does not have shadow skills, it does not have any group skills. All it can do is the most primitive attack, which is also a disadvantage. However, once it is supplemented by shadow magic, or at night, the combat power of the shadow demon tiger is at the peak level among the commanders. Even the snow girl cannot deal with the shadow demon tiger at night. However, even so, the shadow demon tiger still protects Tangmao well. The snow girl is even simpler. One strike can kill more than 10 white sand demon soldiers. Roar. However, without Tangmao's magic to assist in the bombing, they put out the posture that looks like the ancient warrior battle formation. The Qs staggered and attacked. After a wave of crazy knife slashing, those sand soldier giants who were about to pick up their swords again retreated to the back, and replaced the group of sand soldier giants who had already accumulated power behind them. The moment this battle formation was used, Zhao Hei was instantly injured. Similarly, the snow girl was also a little embarrassed. Of course, Zhao Hei and Zunu both need to protect Tangmao, otherwise, they wouldn't be so embarrassed. Even if they consume too much physical energy, they can still run away. After all, the current encirclement does not pose any threat to the two commanders. The eldest girl seemed to be offended and shouted angrily. The little girl who was resting seemed to have heard the angry shout of sister and immediately floated out. However, she was so small. Facing the white sand demon soldiers with strong killing aura, she immediately hid behind Tangmao's neck. Typical of being unable to beat and unable to provoke, she turned back and shouted dad timidly. Tangmao had already connected the constellation at this time and then shouted, Zhao Hei, get out of the way. The shadow demon tiger also had a telepathic connection with Tangmao, so the moment Tangmao shouted, it immediately understood and jumped to the side. He gave Tangmao a clear view of the field of vision and saw a group of white sand demon soldiers suddenly rushing over. Ice crystal spears. Tang Mao's constellation had already formed, and ice crystal spears appeared around him. The power of these spears alone was not very strong, but the densely packed needles around them were actually spears. At the moment of release, they turned into spears and sprayed out. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. PS. Please subscribe, please reward, please vote for the monthly ticket! Exclamation mark. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 130 to the second attack method of high level skills. The spear condensed in the form of ice attribute energy did not end after a round of sweeping. The second round of fine needles also turned into ice attribute spears again, and sprayed out immediately. Tang Mao used the ability of the domain to research the second attack method of the ice crystal spear. He turned its single attack into a group attack. Although the group attack is not as powerful as the single attack, the damage is enough to deal with some war general level monsters. There were 3 rounds of sweeping, and the hundreds of white sand monster soldiers were all killed here. After killing a way out, the shadow demon tiger came to Tang Mao in a few leaps. Then he picked up Tang Mao and put him on his body and ran towards the torn hole. After Tang Mao shouted to the snow girl, he did not forget to collect all the residual souls here. And the spirit must be said to be really a feeling of 1 in 1,000. Of course, his luck is already good. After all, some hunters may not get a spirit in their entire lives. Xiao Hei was very fast. In a moment, he shook off the white sand demon soldiers behind him. The snow girl went back to the contract space to rest. Aingning Xiao Yanji rubbed Tang Mao's neck. Now that there was no danger, it was time to eat. Seeing the little girl crying for food, Tang Mao was almost melted by her cuteness. He quickly took out some spirit seed fragments found here and gave them to her. It seemed that she noticed that Tang Mao was distributing milk powder. The snow girl, who had already returned to the contract space, came out again on her own initiative. Eyeing, she pouted her little mouth and called Tang Mao. That little look seemed to be saying that dad was partial. I didn't say I wouldn't give it to you. You went back to the contract space by yourself, right? Tang Mao took out the prepared milk powder and handed it to the snow girl. It was more than 20 million again, and it was gone just like that. However, raising a daughter, even if you know it is expensive, you have to grit your teeth, hold your breath, and suck the snot out of your nose. After receiving the unbiased care, the snow girl returned to her contract space with satisfaction. As for little flame princess, when she saw her sister go back, she followed her happily. The 2 elemental pets were born with the space system. In the contract space, it can be said that, unless Tang Mao stopped them, the sisters would be able to enter and exit freely. Poor little Black, seeing the 2 little sisters go back to sleep after eating and drinking, and it had to continue to carry dad back to the top of the mountain, felt helpless. But think about it, if it didn't send Tang Mao back, he might have encountered some trouble along the way. With the shadow demon tiger riding, some low-level demons didn't dare to come up to harass. After returning to the top of the mountain, I saw that the Flame Witch and Chen Ying had prepared food. Because of Tang Mao's help, the mother and daughter took unusual care of Tang Mao. What delicious food, what tonic, that's all. However, this tonic made Tang Mao very puzzled. He is not weak, does he need it? Is it necessary? However, after all, it was the mother and daughter's love, so he could only make do with it and solve all the problems without leaving any. Now he was not in a hurry to go back, so he could take advantage of this time to replenish his bullets. After returning, he would let Tang Yu know what it meant to be a cow that could plow the field. At night, Tang Mao was still practicing controlling the stars. Although he had already released high-level magic, it was still too slow. After his magic power was restored, he immediately started practicing. Therefore, in the dead of night, even if there was a beautiful Chen Ying by his side, he still didn't have much in mind. After all, women would only affect the speed of his magic release. Without women in his heart, magic is naturally strong. Well, let's show it. He was just not sure if he could beat Chen Ying's mother. Otherwise, it would be nice to experience wild fighting in the wilderness. At least the feeling of experimenting with Tang Yu was really nice. After eating and drinking, controlling the shadow, Tang Mao fell asleep in the middle of the night. Because this is the territory of the Fire Witch, no demons came to die. This night, it was still calm, except for the uncomfortable place to live. It can be said that everything else is fine. It is simply the top configuration for outdoor training. Before returning to school, he was extremely miserable in the daunting lake. Not to mention that there is no comfortable soft meat to lean on. Even sleeping has to be very vigilant. It is different here. Not to mention that no one dares to offend the Fire Witch. Even if there is, with the strength of the Fire Witch, it can still be detected immediately. The next day, after Tang Mao got up, he ate some food and then did not go to the territory of the Beisha demon soldiers again. It is natural to keep a low profile when you are willing. You can't attract too much hatred. Yesterday, so many of the other party's kind were killed. If you go again today, the other party will definitely come to fight regardless of life and death. So, Tang Mao strolled in this fire cloud forest today. The demons in his heart are almost all at the level of generals, and their strength is several times stronger than some ordinary general level monsters. After all, they all survived the catastrophe fire. Which one of them can't be strong? If he encounters a general level demon, Tang Mao will only use intermediate magic to deal with it. However, one intermediate magic outside can kill a group of demons in seconds, but the demons here can't use other magic except ice magic. These demons are better than ordinary general level demons in terms of combat power and defense. Obviously, their bloodline is quite high. If he encounters 4 or 5 general level demons, even if he can deal with them, it will take some time to deal with them without high level magic and domain. But this can also be regarded as a kind of practice. He knows that he can't eat a fat man in one bite. Therefore, he never thought about releasing high level magic in seconds. But intermediate magic still can't be done in one thought. Moreover, he is also practicing the release of magic fusion. It's just a pity that he doesn't have this talent for multitasking. As for when fighting the enemy, Tang Mao almost used space magic. Now, what he wants to break through is this type of magic, but it is really not easy to break through the space system. 7 or 8 days passed quickly. During these 7 or 8 days, Tang Mao cleaned up the fire cloud forest and several territories of the Sand Howling Tiger. These days, he has got a lot of good things. In addition to the leave, more than half a month has passed, so Tang Mao thinks he should leave. However, what makes Tang Mao puzzled is that Shinaying has no intention of leaving and is going to continue to accompany her mother here. PS. Please reward, monthly ticket, and subscription. Currently, one more award is needed. Chapter 133 finally succeeded. He didn't try to persuade her, although she was not lonely, because she had a girl with her. However, since her mother was here, he couldn't force her to leave. In the past half month, Xiao Yanji has grown a lot, and it seems that she is about to reach the stage of promotion. This has nothing to do with luck or anything else. It is entirely because her milk powder is never out of stock. She is a real foodie every day, the kind who sleeps and eats and sleeps. Tang Mao originally thought that he had gained a lot from this trip, but after a few days of feeding Yanji, he found that it was not easy to raise a daughter. Raising two is an endless consumption. Raise a son in poverty and a daughter in wealth. Poor Xiao Hei is one of those who was raised in poverty, and it was almost always used on the way back. Because of the little brain tiger, Tang Mao did not encounter any trouble. Of course, even if he met it, the other party would eventually become a remnant soul and be taken in by it. 3 days later, Demon City. On the first day back in the city, Tang Mao exchanged all the things he had collected for cash and then prepared a month's worth of food for Zunu and Yanji, and also bought another copy of the Galaxy Vein. He couldn't wait to break through the high-level space system. But after all, he had already used it. Who knew if he could break through smoothly this time? Therefore, it is better to prepare an extra copy of the Galaxy Vein. The most important thing is that no matter whether it can be used or not, this thing has no shelf life, and its value will not change. In the end, he returned with a full load, and only had less than 100 million yuan left in his hand. When Tang Mao returned to the apartment, it was already late at night. When he opened the door and walked in, he saw Munugio practicing, and AI-22 didn't know where he had gone. He was listless at first, but in an instant he seemed to be resurrected with full blood. AI-22 was not there, only he and Munugio. Licking his lips, Tang Mao had a strange thought in his mind. Munugio, who was originally meditating, seemed to notice someone entering the room, and opened her eyes. At first, she thought it was AI-22, but the opponent's footsteps were steady and powerful, obviously not Big Rabbit. Her beautiful eyes opened, and Tang Mao's face was full in front of her. After a moment of stunned, Munugio stretched out her jade hand to push him away and said, "Tang Mao, why are you back?" As if she felt that this was a bit awkward, Munugio said again, "I heard from Zhao Manayan that you are not training in Zoyan. Do you want me to live there forever?" Tang Mao's mouth twitched slightly. Munugio was also a little embarrassed when she heard this. She also knew that what she asked was a bit strange. However, when this guy came back, the possessive eyes swept towards her without any concealment, and Munugio couldn't stand it. Especially since AI-22 returned to his hometown today, Munugio couldn't help but feel a little panic. She likes him, but it's not appropriate to say it now, right? However, before she could say anything, Tang Mao had already hugged her by the waist. "Ah, what are you doing? Put me down." Looking at the shy canary in her arms, Tang Mao thought to herself, it seems that the tonic food for half a month will not be wasted. He was too lazy to talk nonsense. At this time, talking is simply a waste of will. Moreover, because of the accident last time, Tang Mao turned around and took Munugio upstairs. After going upstairs, before Munugio could speak, he blocked her soft lips in a domineering manner. Munugio, who had never tried anything, was facing her LSP. How could she be an opponent? She became confused in minutes. "Oh umbrella." Munugio's final reaction was these 3 words. As for what this thing is, Tang Mao said that he didn't quite understand. Ding ding ding. The next day, the alarm clock in front of the bed rang for the nth time, but every time it was about to sound loudly and call the person on the bed to get up, it was directly pressed by a big hand. However, this hand pressing the clock was obviously different from the usual white jade hand. After killing the noisy sound again, Tang Mao turned over, buried his head on the soft pillow, and continued to sleep. But his action finally woke up Munugio. After all, it was already 11 o'clock. Even if there is a possibility of being plot, he is a magician after all, and his physique is much better than that of ordinary people, so it is natural that he will recover well. When Munugio opened her eyes, she still felt a little dazed. If it weren't for the dull pain under her body and the mess on the ground, she really felt that she was dreaming. Slowly pushing away a guy who was sleeping like a dead pig, Munugio crawled out. No matter if the one on the ground was her favorite or not, she couldn't have it now. After all, it had been torn apart. Russell. Tang Mao had already opened his eyes when he was pushed away. However, he didn't say anything. After all, sometimes, the most beautiful thing is the unintentional beauty. Jiao Jiao. After appreciating it, Tang Mao called out with satisfaction. Hearing this, Munugio was stunned. When she found that Tang Mao had some ideas again, she glared at him with dissatisfaction. This guy is simply too much. It's already noon, and he still wants to? She didn't know that Tang Mao hadn't enjoyed the feeling of victory for a long time. It's inevitable that he was a little emotional. I don't know if it was because the food was too good in Zoyan, or what. He felt that he would be the cow that wouldn't lie down. Shameless. Just when Tang Mao was thinking and showing a wretched smile, Munugio spat softly and left immediately. It was almost time for the selection in the government office. She could have practiced all night last night, but she was ruined by this bad guy. Now time is the real meaning of life for Munugio. The door closed with a click. Tang Mao came back from her own world. Looking at the closed door, Tang Mao lowered her head helplessly and muttered to herself, "Alas, I finally found a weaker one, but he didn't give me any chance to use it. It's so difficult." But at this moment, Tang Mao's mobile phone vibrated slightly, which meant she woke up. Otherwise, this sound would be ignored directly. After all, it was not very loud. Tang Mao picked up the phone and looked at it and was stunned because the caller was Tang Yu. After making sure that Munigyo was no longer upstairs, Tang Mao answered the phone. Hello, Yu. Did you miss me? No, I just came back from Zoyan and I'm on my way back now. Ah, you're at home? Then wait for me, I'll be back soon. It's okay. Nothing is more important than your wife. Wait for me at home, I'll be there soon. No, you don't have to pick me up. Wait for me at home, I'll tell you good news when I get back. After Tang Mao hung up the phone, he was stunned. He didn't expect that Tang Yu would come this morning, just after he came back last night. Moreover, she came just after he did something he hadn't done for a long time. Isn't this a bit too coincidental? But he didn't have much time to think about it. After all, Tang Yu was waiting at home. Chapter 134, Clingy Yanji. After Tang Mao dressed up, he washed up again, which only took about 5 minutes. He was still in a hurry, but after leaving the room, he calmed down. After all, he just picked Gio's fruit and left like that, which was a bit rude. Although he has not been a human for many years, it is inevitable that he still has a little humanity for the first time. After Tang Mao went downstairs, he saw that breakfast was ready, and Munigyo seemed to have eaten and started to meditate again. When he came down, Munigyo said as usual, "Let's eat." Although it was still the same words, there was clearly an ambiguous feeling in her tone. Gio, Mo-fan has something to do with me, so I have to go out first. I won't eat when I come back in the evening. Although it was a loving breakfast, time was tight, and I might need to spend some time with Munigyo, so it was impossible to eat breakfast. What's the matter? It's so urgent. How can I not eat? Munigyo paused and looked at Tang Mao in confusion. I don't know either, but I feel that guy's in a hurry. How about I eat something first and let him wait for a few more minutes? It shouldn't be a problem. You should go first and buy some food on the way. If I really need to find you for something urgent, it would be bad if you are delayed. Munigyo shook her head. Seeing that Munigyo said so, Tang Mao did not pretend or act. It would be bad to be late. Yeah, see you tonight. But after saying that, Tang Mao came to Munigyo, pecked her face lightly, and then turned and walked towards the entrance. Although she knew each other well, Munigyo was still a little shy and lowered her head and said After leaving the building, Tang Mao directly called out the eldest daughter who was practicing, and then they merged and flew all the way to another apartment. The eldest daughter was locked up for a whole night for no reason. She was a little bit irritable to begin with, and now she was suddenly asked to help, which made her a little dissatisfied. While flying, little Yanji suddenly ran out. However, because it was a full-speed flight, as soon as she came out, she hid in the short sleeves of Tang Mao's coat. Little Yanji came out because she saw her sister was not there. However, she was flying at full speed when she came out, and she asked a little confused. Because of the contract, Tang Mao could understand everything she said. However, as they were in a hurry, Tang Mao didn't have the heart to respond and directly reached out and pressed her little head into the short sleeves. Little Yanji, who was in Tang Mao's arms, cried out in dissatisfaction, "Awoo awoo." A few minutes later, when Tang Mao arrived outside the apartment, he was not so anxious. Speaking of which, if he didn't let Tang Yu pick him up, there had to be a surprise or something, otherwise it would be hard to explain when he went back. When he arrived at the apartment, Tang Mao comforted his two daughters while walking into the apartment. "Tang Mao?" Just as he was about to go upstairs, Tang Yu's voice suddenly came from the apartment. Hearing the sound, Tang Mao looked over and said, "Yu, why aren't you staying at home? Why did you run out? I was just about to buy some ingredients. You'll be back in a while, right? I just wanted to give you a surprise," Tang Mao said with a smile. Tang Yu snorted and glared. "If I hadn't asked Mo-fan, I wouldn't have known you went to Zoyan." They've come back. Why are you back now?" Tang Yu seemed to get angry as she spoke. She looked very angry and glared at Tang Mao. "Don't be angry, you know, it's not just me who needs resources now. The consumption of these two ancestors alone is extremely high," Tang Mao said helplessly. It's because he knew how powerful they were, otherwise Tang Mao would have kicked them out. The consumption every day has surpassed himself. It seemed that the two children, one big and one small, were very dissatisfied with Tang Mao's accusation and refuted at the same time. Snow Girl Tang Yu naturally knew Yanji, and after seeing Yanji, she said she fell in love with her again. In addition, Yanji was not shy, so she quickly circled around Tang Yu. Yu, seeing that you two get along so well, why don't you try awakening the summoning system with your fourth system? I will end my relationship with her, and then you will reach a contract. As soon as Tang Mao said this, before Tang Yu could say anything, little Yanji immediately floated in front of Tang Mao's neck, and her little arms seemed to want to hug him. Then she looked pitiful and cried at Tang Mao. Yanji was saying that she should not make a contract with others. She also begged Tang Mao not to abandon her. Who said I don't want you anymore? I just want you to help mom improve some combat power. Dad is still your dad. Looking at this clingy little baby, Tang Mao explained. Who knew that after Tang Mao said this, little Yanji's eyes were full of tears. That aggrieved little expression made Tang Yu feel distressed. At Tang Yu's suggestion, Tang Mao had no choice but to say, okay, I'll talk about it. I'll still respect your choice when the time comes. After listening to what Tang Mao said, and with the comfort of the snow girl beside her, little Yanji became happy again. But this time, she was close to Tang Mao. She was afraid that Tang Mao would not want her anymore. Tang Mao was a little worried about this. Yanji played a big role, but she didn't have the fire attribute. Without the fire attribute, all the power of little Yanji could not be perfectly exerted. But with her current appearance, it was impossible to let her follow Tang Yu. Moreover, when she left, the flame which looked like she was giving a lot of warnings. Looking at the pitiful little girl, Tang Mao held her in his hands and said, Dad is not afraid that you eat too much, but just wants you to better exert your power. Eyeing no matter what Tang Mao said, little Yanji was not going to leave. In the end, Tang Yu also shook his head. In his opinion, it was a good thing for Tang Mao to have Yanji and Snow Girl around. Because Tang Mao always likes to go to the wild to hunt monsters. The outside world full of monsters is dangerous after all. Compared with her who is being promoted, Tang Mao obviously needs Yanji's help more. Let little Yanji follow you, so that I can rest assured when you go out. Seeing that Tang Yu said so, Tang Mao naturally couldn't say anything more. Moreover, although he had only been in contact with her for less than a month, his love for this clingy little girl was no less than that of the older girl. So if he doesn't give it to Tang Yu, then don't give it to Tang Yu. Just like Tang Yu said, she is going to be promoted on the saddle, and there will be no more dangerous tasks in the future. So there is nothing to worry about her comfort. Chapter 135 Thoughtful Little Lover. Tang Yu came here on a business trip to try her luck, but she didn't expect Tang Mao to come back. After the two bought the ingredients, Tang Yu showed off her cooking skills. Although it was still not delicious, it was not poisonous. During the meal, Tang Yu told Tang Mao that she had recently received some news about the blue-clothed members of the Black Church and was being captured. Just now, she said that there was no danger, but suddenly a member of the Black Church was mentioned. Tang Mao was confused. He immediately said, how about I go with you? Now he can almost be said to have surpassed Tang Yu. After all, he is a high level in 3 systems. Tang Yu is only a high level in 2 systems, although the fire system has reached the second high level. But if they fight, even if Tang Mao doesn't use the summoned beast, it will take at most a few minutes to KO her. But even now, when the demon system cannot be used easily, he doesn't think he can easily provoke the Black Church. What about Tang Yu? No, it's not me this time. There are colleagues. Moreover, we haven't got the accurate clues, and we are just searching now. Tang Yu shook her head and refused Tang Mao and said, besides, the most important thing for you now is to prepare for the national government competition. You were chosen by Hua Xinhong, the head of the Hua army, who personally supported you. In fact, the last time he heard that someone behind him was optimistic about him, Tang Mao also had some guesses. It's just that in his opinion, this big man should be the speaker Xiao Zheng. But he didn't expect that it would be Hua Xinhong. TSK. Tang Mao smacked his lips and said immediately, "This old man has a good eye." Hearing this, Tang Yu patted him lightly and said with some anger, "How can you be so rude?" Tang Mao shrugged and replied, okay, I know." In his opinion, there is nothing that can't be said between the two of them. However, thinking that Tang Yu is also a person who is about to rise, he didn't speak without restraint. It saves Tang Yu from causing trouble in the end. After the two of them finished lunch, it was already close to dusk. Tang Mao was still thinking about taking Tang Yu for a walk. Who knew that Tang Yu had to leave because of a mission? There was no way. Before she had enough qualifications, it was impossible for her to be idle. However, Tang Yu still could not get involved in truly dangerous missions. The Judgment Council was a close uncle. Although he said that he would not take care of her, it was still somewhat different. He kissed Tang Yu and said goodbye, and personally sent her to the airport. Although he thought that Tang Yu would not be in any danger, Tang Mao still said, "If you find the location of the Black Church, remember to tell me. At least let me know where you went." Tang Yu nodded. She knew that Tang Mao was just thinking about her safety. She replied, "Okay, I know. You should go back soon." After another round of reluctant parting, Tang Mao let Tang Yu leave until the boarding announcement. After Tang Yu left, Tang Mao looked at the time. It was already 7 o'clock in the evening. Immediately, he called out the snow girl again, possessed her, and returned to his nest. He was still considering whether to go out in the middle of the night. After comforting Tang Yu, at most, he could come back early the next day. Now it was considered easy. After another round of magic energy consumption, Tang Mao rushed back in less than 20 minutes. It's fun to be fickle for a while, but it's exhausting to be fickle for a lifetime. After Tang Mao opened the door and returned to the room, he saw Munugio still sitting there meditating. Obviously, she also knew about the national government competition. Moreover, this national government competition seemed to be very important to her. Tang Mao did not disturb her, but quietly walked to the balcony, closed the door quietly, and looked into the night. In fact, he should have reported to the school today and instantly asked the campus for a chance to enter the 3-step tower. Now it seems that he can only wait until tomorrow. Tang Mao did not practice, because according to the time, Munigio's practice should be about to end. While the dead rabbit hasn't come back yet, while Munugio hasn't devoted herself to this practice, it's natural to cherish the present time. But just watching like this is obviously a bit too boring. Finally, Tang Mao picked up his mobile phone and started watching videos. Since he came to this world, he hasn't played with his mobile phone much. It seems that all day long, he is either practicing or controlling the stars. It's rare that he has time today. After clicking on the video, Tang Mao started watching it. Just like the videos in his previous life, there is nothing much to watch. It's either poisonous chicken soup or some wild magician anchors. If they can kill a slave level demon, many people will admire them. Although it's boring, Tang Mao actually watched it for nearly an hour. At this time, Munigio also withdrew from the dark practice. When Tang Mao came back just now, she naturally knew it, but when she saw that Tang Mao didn't speak, she continued to practice. After getting up and stretching, Munigio said in a flat voice, "Have you had dinner?" She looked like nothing happened with the two of them. Tang Mao was a little puzzled, but isn't that what women are like? Tang Mao shook his head and then said, "No, you haven't eaten yet. Can I ignore you? Let's go out to eat." Munigio nodded and said she was going back to the house to change clothes. Just after she went upstairs, Tang Mao wanted to follow her, but Munigio seemed to have expected it. When he just stood up, Munigio said, "You are not allowed to touch me without my permission, or I will move out immediately." Before Tang Mao reached the point that convinced the Mu family, Munigio didn't want their relationship to be too close. Tang Mao's mouth twitched slightly, and he said with some dissatisfaction, "Jiao, are you going to raise me as your mistress? When you have enough to make the Mu family respect you, that's it." Munigio nodded and said, "Besides, you can also treat me as your mistress." After all, their family backgrounds are different. Before Tang Mao has enough status, there is still no possibility for the two of them. Although it may make Tang Mao sad, Munugio doesn't want Tang Mao to suffer unnecessary humiliation. Seeing Munugio wiggling her hips and going back to the house, Tang Mao laughed. Not only did he not say anything sad, but he also grinned silently. He thought to himself, Gio is such a considerate little lover. PS. Please subscribe, please reward, please vote. Subscription is the most important. Those who haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Chapter 136 Advanced Space System. Munugio changed clothes faster than AI Tutu. After changing into a short-sleeved shirt and a pair of jeans, she came out, looking at her beautiful curves, especially her hips, which were perfectly displayed under the jeans, and looking at the size that was covered up. Tang Mao felt a little distressed. Gio, you are already D. Why don't you change it? Are you so comfortable like this? Hearing this, Munugio almost missed the last step when she walked down the stairs. She glared at Tang Mao with a shy face and said angrily, "Damn hooligan. I'm not feeling sorry for you." Tang Mao said innocently, "Are you going to eat or not?" Munugio slapped Tang Mao's outstretched hand and said helplessly. Tang Mao had to give up on untying her. He hurriedly said, "Go, go, go." When the two of them went out, it was already past 9 o'clock. But in the Magic City, there are gourmet restaurants open even in the early morning, so there is no need to worry about having no place to eat. The two walked and came to a crayfish restaurant. I don't know if it was the one recommended by Emofan, but the taste here is still good. At least Tang Mao ate a lot, but Munugio, who kept in shape, only ate a little. After that, she peeled shrimp for the greedy little Yanji. It seemed that Zio Yanji had long forgotten what happened in the morning. When Munugio peeled shrimp for her, she sat there obediently, like a cute baby. No matter what kind of woman, there is really no resistance to this kind of cute porcelain doll. Originally, it was just Zio Yanji who was outside to satisfy her craving, but later Zio Zunu was also attracted. After watching Munugio peeling shrimp for Yanji, Zunu looked at Tang Mao with a face full of desire. After all, she was still a little cold. Even now, she could only stay for a few minutes when she was with Tang Yu. As for other people, Zunu refused to get close. Zio Zunu, who didn't want to get close to the strange mother, looked at Tang Mao and started to whimper. Tang Mao was too lazy to peel shrimp for himself, and Zunu wanted to be a laborer. He immediately said, "Go away, don't you have hands? Peel it and eat it yourself." Aha, the little snow girl pouted her lips in dissatisfaction and complained. Hearing this, Tang Mao curled his lips and replied, "You are the only one who has misophobia. The oil can be washed off. Peel it and eat it yourself. Just go back and wash it." The snow girl still looked like she was refusing, but she really wanted to eat it. It was all Zio Yanji's fault. If this little girl didn't eat human food, she wouldn't have liked this kind of thing if she had tried it. But the little girl was fed by someone just because she acted cute. After someone fed her, she ignored her sister. Munugio, who was serving Zio Yanji, heard Zio Zunu's aggrieved and said softly, "Zio Zunu, come here, I'll peel it for you." Zio Zunu glanced at Munugio and then at Tang Mao. It was obvious that she was still resisting. Seeing this, Tang Mao also said, "Gio's mother will peel it for you. Just go, you are not a stranger." Zio Zunu was like a shy little girl, hugging Tang Mao's calf tightly, as if she couldn't go over, and wanted Tang Mao to peel it for her. Moreover, she sounded a little angry. Munugio said that she could do nothing to help Zio Zunu's temper. It felt like the big girl was going to freeze the restaurant, so Tang Mao had to say, okay, peel it, okay." Seeing Tang Mao say this, Zio Zunu sat aside obediently. Then she let out a soft. This meal was very tiring. Even at the end, Tang Mao grabbed Zio Yanji in his hand and patted her little butt. Although she didn't hurt, Zio Yanji still felt aggrieved all the way back. Tang Mao was helpless. He really couldn't afford to offend either of the two girls. He couldn't afford to offend the way one of them pouted and cried when he was unhappy. After returning home, Tang Mao sent the sisters back to the contract space to rest. He pulled Munugio into the room as well. Nijio said that she didn't allow it, but once something started, they couldn't be stopped by just opening their mouths. 3 hours later, Tang Mao asked a little vainly, Jio, can you still hold on? Nijio panted lightly and replied, not bad. Suddenly, the pleasure that had just come disappeared just like that. The happiness was gone in an instant. This is simply unfair. Are you not able to do it? Nijio didn't understand what Tang Mao meant and asked in confusion. What a joke, how could I not be able to do it? Nijio was a little confused. She had obviously lost her fighting power, so how could she suddenly regain her momentum? After a week of shameless life, Nijio chose to go back to her family for a treat. There was no other way. She couldn't practice here with peace of mind. She was rational every time, but in the end, Tang Mao would always succeed. So, she chose to run away and go home. After Nijio left, Tang Mao finally breathed a sigh of relief. If Nijio didn't run away, Tang Mao would have to run away herself. Face and other things were no longer so important. Fortunately, her dignity was restored in the end. 3 days after Nijio left, she came back with AI-22. Tang Mao, who had just recovered, was really a little panicked when he saw the two women. It's not easy to keep a lover. He didn't reminisce with them. He found an excuse to retreat and left. After arriving at the school, Tang Mao found Dean Zhao, received the opportunity to practice in the 3-step tower. The 3-step tower is like his own home now. Dean Zhao will not refuse Tang Mao as long as he applies. However, Dean Zhao also has requirements. Tang Mao must make his presence felt in the school. Regardless of whether he can do it or not, he agreed in one breath. Entering the 3-step tower again, Tang Mao directly began to use the Starsea Vein to break through the barrier that had been unable to be broken for a long time. If it was just a high level at the beginning, the space system would not be so easy to break through. However, during this period of time, fighting and practicing, the 3 systems of high-level magic have become much more proficient. Tang Mao, whose strength has been improved, has 3 galaxy veins, and it is not difficult to break through the space system. On the 3rd day of entering the 3-step tower, he used up 2 galaxy veins and finally broke through to the high-level space system. After the strength was improved to the high-level space system, the familiar feeling came. It was still that familiar feeling. Tang Mao, who closed his eyes, immediately clearly felt that a strange energy emerged in his spiritual space. Immediately, he closed his eyes and entered his spiritual space. Somewhere in the chaotic spiritual universe, it seemed as if a small life was bred there. They changed this spiritual space, slowly encircled a small territory of their own. As small as dust, they carefully stood their ground in that area, and with a bit of aggression, they wanted a wider territory, but they were not as violent and overbearing as the thunder element, nor as cold as the ice element. They showed a quietness and aloofness that other element did not have, but they spied on everything around them with their own ideas. Chapter 137 Arrival at the Ancient Capital. This piece of dark stardust has its own color and luster. If you don't feel it carefully, it's easy to ignore its existence, but it's there, shining with the light of dark stardust. After a pause, Tang Mao understood that this was the shadow system. I didn't expect that this 6th system is the shadow system. After sighing, Tang Mao immediately felt new energy. This time it was a white whirlwind. Tang Mao was slightly stunned, and then he immediately understood. Is this 7th system of magic the wind system? But this wind doesn't seem to be a simple wind system. There are some sand and dust around it, and the small particles seem to be very sharp. However, this time the element system did not awaken its own soul seed like the previous thunder system and ice system. When Tang Mao thought it was over, another energy suddenly came from behind him. A hot energy. When Tang Mao looked back, he found that he had awakened 3 systems. Including the demon system, he already had 8 systems. With the wind system, he can fight alone in the air battle in the future without the fusion of Snow Girl. And this shadow system, after breaking through the high level, Zio Hei has also been absolutely strengthened. As for the last fire system, it came just in time. Yanji also has her room to play. However, what Tang Mao didn't expect was that he actually awakened 3 systems this time. Exclamation mark. After exiting from the spiritual space, Tang Mao was full of excitement and said, "Damn. Even Emofan, that little brother, has to be super class to have 8 systems. And I have it now." Although Emofan awakened a lot at once when he reached the forbidden spell, but Tang Mao thought that now was the most needed time. There is a chance of 7 days to enter the 3-step tower, and now it has only been used for 3 days, and there are still 4 days to practice. Tang Mao will naturally not go out like this. Isn't it just the right time to practice these 3 new systems? After the high level, this elementary level 1 magic can be said to be almost instantly controlled. Tang Mao practiced the shadow system on the first day, the fire system on the second day, the shadow system on the third day, and the fire system on the fourth day. After both the fire and shadow element broke through the intermediate level, it was time for Tang Mao to leave the 3-step tower. He was not in a hurry to practice the wind element. After all, the most important things for Tang Mao right now were the shadow element and the fire element. After all, these 2 magic element corresponded to 2 contracted beasts. After leaving the 3-step tower, Tang Mao turned on his phone. Then he saw a bunch of missed calls. Except for a few from Unigio and AI22, there were only Tang Yu's calls left. Almost 3 calls a day. Tang Mao called back immediately because Tang Yu called. It is very likely that she found something. But what made Tang Mao helpless was that Tang Yu did not answer the phone. Moreover, 4 or 5 calls in a row did not go through. He had to open the message box and saw that Tang Yu sent a message saying that she went to the ancient capital to check the people of the Black Church. When he saw the word ancient capital, Tang Mao immediately rushed towards it with all his strength. Going to the ancient capital at this time, isn't that looking for excitement? Question mark? Unfortunately, her phone was not connected, and Tang Mao had no way to ask again. Dean Zio didn't even bother to say hello, and went straight to the airport. The dark clouds were as dense as black velvet, covering all the sunlight. It didn't rain, and the sky and the earth were dark, and with the grey and dry colors brought by the season, there was no life at all. After Tang Mao's plane slowly landed from the dark clouds, he summoned the shadow demon tiger and ran all the way to Zion. Because that's where Tang Yu said he was going at the end. Because of the undead here, the ancient capital is in a state of strict alert, and you can even see that high city walls have been erected in the entire outer city area. The ancient capital of Zion has an ancient city wall. The area inside the ancient city wall is considered the city center. Outside the ancient city wall are other urban areas such as Yanta and Bilin. The inner city wall is more often used for sightseeing. Nowadays, a larger outer city wall has been built outside the inner city wall. The diameter of this outer city wall is about 5 times wider than that of the inner city wall. People who were originally distributed in different urban areas, including the suburbs, have all requested to move to this outer city wall. There were people from the Magic Association guarding the city gate, and the military magician was in charge of the inspection. In broad daylight, the entry and exit of living people were not very strict. After Tang Mao entered here, he was puzzled again. Because he only knew that Tang Yu said she was coming to the ancient capital, but he didn't know where Tang Yu was. Of course, if he guessed, Tang Yu should be in this city. If someone is chasing the Black Church, where would he go if he is not in the city? You know, the Cardinal of the Black Church, Seren, is also here. But, coincidentally, he has never seen Seren. Although he knew that this woman would mix in with the high-level people in the ancient capital, Tang Mao didn't know who she was or what she looked like. Just when Tang Mao was a little aimless, the idle phone suddenly rang. After seeing that it was Tang Yu, Tang Mao immediately answered the call. Immediately, Tang Mao asked with a hint of anxiety, "Yu, where are you? I'm already in the ancient capital." Ah. Tang Yu was slightly stunned. She didn't expect that Tang Mao would rush to the ancient capital, just because she didn't pay attention to her phone for a day. As if thinking of something, Tang Yu hurriedly said, "We have left the ancient capital, and the blue-clothed deacon has been arrested. You should also come back quickly. The ancient capital has not been peaceful recently." When Tang Mao was about to nod, he suddenly saw an acquaintance. Or rather, the source of a disaster. That's right, the person who came was Emofan. When Tang Mao saw him, he felt a headache. This guy is here, which means that it is unlikely that he can go back. Tang Mao also knows a little about how he came here, isn't it because that idiot Zhang Xiaohao fell here? After Tang Mao told Tang Yu not to worry about him, he hung up the phone. At this time, Mo Fan also came over in a hurry. Boss, you are here too, great. Come with me to rescue Monkey. This guy was not polite at all, and directly told the story of Zhang Xiaohao. Although he had formed a team yesterday, Tang Mao was obviously more reliable. With him, safety can be guaranteed. Tang Mao glanced at the crowd and they looked just average. When he was about to refuse, he saw a woman in the team wearing a black silk veil, which made people pay special attention. After seeing the graceful woman wearing a black silk veil, Tang Mao changed his mind and said, okay, since she is your younger brother, she is also my younger brother. Let's go with you. He remembered who this woman was very clearly. He might not remember other things, but his memory of the little sluts in this world can be said to be not bad at all. When the short man who led the team saw Mo Fan pulling Tang Mao over and wanted to talk a few words, Mo Fan hurriedly said, with my boss following us, our safety can be improved by more than half. He didn't want this wretched guy to say a few words and then be taken away by Tang Mao. The most terrifying thing is that, if they disagree with each other, it is not impossible that Tang Mao will blast him into slag with a thunderbolt. That's why he gave a voice reminder in advance. Chapter 138 Enchanting. Although the short man didn't pay any attention to the deeper meaning, Mo Fan had already paid the money with great pain. Now he was just asking for a thug, so he wasn't unhappy about it. After all, it was really dangerous outside. Including the short man and his companion, the big strong man, there were 7 people in total, 6 men and 1 woman. The city gate was still open, so if everyone wanted to go out, they just needed to register. After leaving the outer city wall, following the short man's instructions, the 7 people began to walk towards Yangyang village. Tang Mao was only interested in this woman. He didn't care about going there. The south was facing the Kindling Mountains. Whether flying or driving, it would not give face to the Kindling Demon Clan. So in order to avoid trouble, if you go to the south, there are basically no cars or the like, and you have to walk. Along the way, Tang Mao's eyes almost never left this woman. Her outfit was very stunning. Even in the cold weather, she still wore a silk robe embroidered with colorful birds. The soft, bright red shawl fell down luxuriously, swinging back and forth when she walked. Her graceful waist and round buttocks, even if she didn't try hard, were full of natural charm. Tang Mao walked behind, and his eyes almost never moved away from the body that was stretched out by the silk robe without any wrinkles. From the waist to the buttocks, and from the long legs to the white and delicate jade feet. It seemed that there was no place that was not full of temptation, no place that was not charming. Seeing the evil, Tang Mao glanced at Mo Fan who was like a fool beside him, and said with contempt in his heart, damn, such a seductive woman, he doesn't know how to cherish her. Is there water in his head? How can this twisting and turning be comparable to Yixingxia? Mo Fan seemed to see Tang Mao's contemptuous eyes, and thought in some confusion, damn, we are both watching, why do you look down on me? He just thought that Tang Mao despised him because he peeked, and didn't think too much. After despising him, Tang Mao turned back to look at Asha Rui's back again. Speaking of it, whether it is Tang Yu or Munujiro, they are already stunning. But the stunning temptation of this retro woman with black silk stockings became stronger as the time spent together increased. Maybe it was because he liked her very much in his previous life. So even before he saw her face, Tang Mao felt that he was conquered by love. Ahem. Mo Fan, who had just been despised, walked for a while and saw Tang Mao staring at the back of the woman in front of him. He coughed and said, boss, there are people behind you, be reserved. He thought he was already very shameless, but he didn't expect Tang Mao to be even more shameless. The girl seemed to have noticed it and turned back several times, but Tang Mao was still staring at her. Hearing this, Tang Mao came back to his senses from his thoughts. He looked at Mo Fan and cursed, damn it, I was just thinking about something. Mo Fan curled his lips and said, stop it, your eyes have never left that buttocks. Can you blame me for this? Tang Mao shrugged and asked. Hearing what he said, it seemed to be true. Can Tang Mao be blamed? The other party walked in front of him, twisting and turning. Wasn't it just for the people behind to see? Hey, look, you don't think you can blame me, right? The short man behind the two came over, approached the two with a lewd smile, and whispered, how great. If you can give me a hey just once, I won't be allowed to touch women in this life. Tang Mao turned around, looked down at the short man again, and then thought for a while and said, she is definitely mine. You don't have to think about it. But I can't live without touching other women for the rest of my life. Mo Fan and the short man gave Tang Mao a disdainful roll of the eyes at the same time. Along the way, the other party didn't even pay attention to him. I really don't know where he got his confidence from. Tang Mao didn't care about the contempt of the two. After all, after he showed his absolute strength, was it difficult to conquer this little hoof? It's almost dark. When can we get to the village? After walking for a while, seeing that the sky was gradually getting dark, Mo Fan turned back and complained with some dissatisfaction. It's winter now, the nights are long and the days are short. Can you be a little more civilized? The short man ignored his complaints and responded with a look of contempt. Mo Fan opened his mouth, but was speechless. In addition, he needed the other party to lead the way, so he could only stop talking. It was getting darker. In this season with long nights and short days, the sun would probably set at 5 o'clock. The dead silence before the nightfall always makes people panic. Even Tang Mao felt a little uncomfortable. After all, the land is so big, how can you be sure that you are not stepping on the territory of a large group of undead? Although the short man must be more familiar with it, the recent disaster of the undead has been more fierce, and no one can be sure whether there will be any problems. Here, eat this thing. The big and strong man took out a grey garlic-like thing from the package behind him. Hearing this, Mo Fan was excited and walked over without hesitation. There is food. Why didn't you say so earlier? I'm just hungry. When he saw the big and strong man handing out specialties to everyone, he immediately took it. This grey thing looks a bit like sweet potato, and a bit like a large garlic. He didn't think too much, and took a crisp bite. The next moment, a few puff sounds were heard, and then Mo Fan cursed. Damn, you gave me poop to eat? This is grey garlic, used to cover up the vitality of the living. With it, the undead will not attack us. There are limited quantities of this thing. You just vomited one. If you can't survive tonight, you can do it yourself. After everyone dispersed, the short man immediately explained. Mo Fan said with backbone, such a disgusting thing. I would rather fight with the undead than eat it. In fact, let alone him. Even Tang Mao looked at the thing in his hand with a complicated expression. Just looking at Mo Fan's appearance just now, you know that this thing must not be delicious. Don't be so confident. Hush, listen. The short man was about to say something, but suddenly heard something, and motioned everyone to be quiet. What are you listening to? Underground, in the soil. In fact, the short man didn't need to say it. The moment the sound of the soil just now appeared, Tang Mao quietly listened. Everyone fell silent. Sure enough, when the sky was still grey, the soil mixed with white fine sand underfoot showed signs of loosening. At a glance, it looked like the fruits and vegetables that the farmer had worked so hard to grow were about to take root and sprout. Similarly, it looked like the things that seemed to be buried underground were about to break out of the soil. Especially when everyone saw the solemn expression on the short man's face, they knew what would happen next. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 139. The village is gone. Gurgle. The short man's Adam's apple moved noticeably. He has been in this land of the dead for so many years, but every time night falls, his heart can't help but beat violently. Even if he is not in the ancient capital, he will still feel uneasy and flustered at night. Eat the grey garlic quickly, the short man told everyone. From the sound of the short man swallowing his saliva just now, the black silk woman and his two companions knew that things were not simple. After hearing the short man's instructions, they almost didn't hesitate and ate the unpalatable grey garlic in one bite. Tang Mao hesitated for a while, but finally ate one. Although this thing is unpalatable, in a place like this, it is better to save some magic energy. After all, who can be sure that they will only encounter slaves and general level undead? Seeing that everyone has eaten, Mo Fan still looks repulsive. At this time, a raro sound came from behind him. Mo Fan turned around and suddenly found a head full of maggots sticking out, with drooping eyes and chins. You want to hurt your grandpa, Mo? Mo Fan kicked the head of the undead without any hesitation. The head was probably separated from the neck. The volley made the head draw an arc in the air and hit a bare rock hard, and the slurry was all over the place. At the same time, the sound of "oh" spread all over the place, and then a large piece of soil cracked. Looking back, Mo Fan saw a huge tomb exposed less than 10 meters away from him. The tomb must have been there for some time, and the bricks were rotten. There were more than 20 half corpses and half skeletons lying in it. They seemed to have heard the call from the rolling head, and they suddenly crawled out of the tomb with bloody eyes. Originally, several people thought that more than 20 were a lot, but who knew that there was another tomb under the tomb, and skeletons kept coming out of the tomb, each of them blood-stained and extremely ferocious. When Mo Fan was about to make a move, he suddenly found that tombs appeared one after another around him. They were distributed in this small muddy land with a radius of less than a few hundred kilometers. Groups of skeletons gathered like soldiers, and their eyes were like stars, locking on Mo Fan, the only one breathing here. The spectacular horror made Mo Fan freeze. Actually, this thing is not bad, if you chew it carefully. Mo Fan immediately picked up the grey garlic and bit it hard, and the expression on his face was as ugly as it could be. But, it's better to be unpalatable than to die. Of course, he didn't have the explosive magic power of Tang Mao. Otherwise, he would have killed everyone first. Anyway, that's how he comforted himself. The short man smiled disdainfully, glanced at the groups of skeletons around him, and said, "Let's leave here quickly. This should be the tomb of Minister of the King Dynasty. There are so many people buried with him and craftsmen, comparable to the funeral of a king. These skeletons are okay. If we really fight, we can deal with them. I'm afraid that there are old ministers in the tomb who were extremely powerful wizards when they were alive and turned into undead generals after death, which would be fatal. The effect of grey garlic is immediate. The breath you exhale will even make the undead feel that you haven't rinsed your mouth, and those with misophobia will give way to you." "Is it always like this here?" asked the woman with black silk. After passing through the groups of undead, the woman with black silk rarely spoke. Her voice was as beautiful as a clear and spiritual song melody floating down from the sky. It would be great if there was a little emotion in her words, but perhaps it was this off-the-worldliness that made people itch. The dwarf man was flattered by this question and quickly replied, "It wasn't like that before. Since the riot in Shuang River, there is a strong aura of death here. People in the industry say that a new era of the undead is coming. Maybe, if the supreme ruler of this undead kingdom changes, this situation is possible." Tang Mao looked at the dwarf man with disdain and cursed, "The dog must die well." The dwarf man didn't care about Tang Mao's contempt at all. He told Asheruaya about the great emperors of China. Tang Mao was curious that Qin Wang Yingzheng was the ancestor of the undead system. If any emperor is strong, then how strong is Qin Shi Huang? Moreover, why is there only one piece of clothing left? Obviously, no one explained the doubts in his heart. Because of the help of this garlic, although they encountered many undead along the way, they were not attacked. Yangyang village is not far ahead. The night is still long. Let's rest there. After walking for a while, the short man pointed to the small hill in front and said, "The village has rules. You'd better abide by them if you want to go in." The strong man reminded everyone. Everyone nodded and said it was no problem. They arrived at the hillside smoothly and went down the hillside. Everyone wanted to see how a human village survived safely in the land of the dead. However, under the hillside, between the mountain streams, and under the Qinling Mountains, they saw only a pile of abandoned and messy wood piles. Where was the village? Looking in another direction, there was a piece of black soil, with nothing but a few bumpy caves. "Are you kidding us?" The bearded man, who was Asheruja's follower, immediately said with some anger. I don't know what's going on." The short man's face changed, and his eyes turned to the strong man. The strong man's eyes were full of astonishment, and he looked completely unbelievable. Then he started running madly down the hill. From the look of the strong man's lost soul, it can be seen that it is indeed the location of Yangyang village. But here, it turned into ruins overnight. After everyone came down, they looked around, and then the short man comforted the strong man and said, let's go, let's go. You can't find anything here. They may have migrated. Don't be so pessimistic. The strong man was still rational. When he found that there was no sign of mass death, he began to lead everyone to the next village. Who a village? Of course, the short man also said that the grey garlic in his hand was not enough to maintain this distance. After all, he had planned to settle in this village before. However, the current situation is really weird. He suggested going back to get some grey garlic, but the strong man said that it would take several months to get it. Hearing this, several people decided to force their way in. The short man refused in his heart. After all, he dared to step into this land of the dead at night, only because of the grey garlic. However, he had already received the money, and he couldn't refuse. Chapter 140 Corpse General. Seeing the constipated look on the dwarf's face, Asharuaya spoke at this time. She glanced at the dwarf and said in a soft voice, along the way, I found that not all areas are full of undead. Let's not use grey garlic for the time being in the second half of the night. Eat it when there are too many undead and we can't deal with them. This is a good idea. The dwarf thought about it and nodded in agreement. This is much more reliable than rushing in the end. According to Asharuaya, everyone did not use grey garlic all the time in the second half of the night. About 3 or 4 miles away from Yangyang village, everyone could clearly feel that the eyes of the surrounding undead became less friendly. The undead in this area were wandering around casually, in groups of 3 or 2, all of them were slave corpses. There was nothing special, except that they looked cold. A corpse that was grinding its teeth on a rock seemed to smell the scent of human meat, and its head creaked and turned around, and its green pupils locked onto the black silk woman closest to it. There was no emotion in the eyes of the black silk woman, and she was not as panicked and disgusted as usual about this disgusting thing. The bearded follower beside her had taken one more step to the side, and under his feet there was an icy star map condensing like frost leaves. Pallor. Seeing that the follower used intermediate magic to deal with a slave level undead, Tang Mao thought to himself, how stupid. In such a place, he still wanted to show something to win the favor of the girl. What else could he be but stupid? Ali, don't waste magic energy. Asharuaya also frowned slightly. Seeing that the bearded follower used intermediate magic to deal with a rotten corpse, she warned him. The bearded follower named Ali hurriedly performed a strange salute, looking like he was listening to the teachings. By the way, we have been walking together for so long, but we still don't know what to call each other? The short man asked with a smile at this time. He had a unique eye and had long seen that this woman's identity was not simple. Yi Menge, Yi of Leaf, Meng of Dream, and Yi of Graceful. You can call me Menge. Asharuaya said her Chinese name and introduced it quite carefully. What a good name. The short man praised directly with a dog-licking look. Tang Mao walked up to her and said, I think this shouldn't be your name, right? Because she just said that she was not Chinese, so he asked this. This is my name here. Asharuaya responded, but she didn't say what her name meant. Seeing this, Tang Mao didn't continue to ask. After all, the future is not impossible to see, and asking questions all the time may be annoying. Such a great JP can't be annoyed no matter what. After a small episode, everyone continued on their way. Along the way, it was almost always the short man and Asharuaya's 2 followers who took action to deal with the wandering undead. It will be dawn in about an hour. After dealing with another wave, the short man looked at his watch and said, these undead, it's not difficult to deal with them. The follower said very proudly. Hearing this, the strong man was startled and hurriedly said, brother, don't say that. The land of the dead is very evil. You really can't say such things. The follower didn't take it seriously, as if he thought the strong man was making a fuss. After all, in his opinion, these undead can be easily destroyed. Zilla. A pale lightning split this narrow world, and suddenly the oppressive black sky and the blackness of the earth were illuminated, making people feel like walking in an endless black box. I don't know, when the air became dull. With the continuous thunder rumbling on the clouds, drops of raindrops as big as beans fell down, hitting the ground heavily, and splashing a small ball of mud. Damn, it's raining. The short man cursed immediately. As soon as the voice fell, heavy rain drifted down, white lightning flashed, and the sky and the earth were reflected by rain, forming a dense hemp. The strong man stood there blankly, and said helplessly, "It's over. The rain will wash away the smell of garlic. We are done." The short man hurriedly said, "Go, find a place to shelter from the rain first." Asherua's 2 followers were very considerate. They didn't bring an umbrella, but they hurriedly took off their coats, to make raincoats for her, covering her all the way, showing their dignity different from ordinary people. Tangmao was a little confused. You know, Asherua doesn't seem to be a goddess now, right? Everyone stepped on the mud and water and moved forward, speeding up. This place is a plain. Unless you go to the Kindling Mountains, it is impossible to find a place to shelter from the rain. But Kindling is a place that can be set foot on casually. If the demons there see them, they will be eaten alive by them. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. At the same time, suddenly, several roars that sounded like heartbeats came from the side. In the rain, the shadow of a giant corpse as big as an ox became clearer and clearer, and its goal was to run towards Asheruah. This guy has several arms, and each arm holds a rusty knife and axe. The rain washes on the knife and axe, washing away all the dried blood, which looks even more terrifying. I wonder how many living people have been killed by this knife and axe. The body is as strong as an ox, and the limbs are hideous. What's more terrifying is that such a thick body actually has a woman's tiny head, with a head of dirty long hair hanging down, and a face full of gloom and viciousness in the rain. Why did you abandon me? The woman opened her mouth and made a very vague and unpleasant sound. Corpse General, big Corpse General. It's over, we're dead. The dwarf stared at the big Corpse General in horror, looking like he was going to run for his life. However, before Asheruah could make a move, her 2 followers each released magic to resist. As soon as the 2 of them made a move, they blasted the big Corpse General back a few steps. However, at the same time, a large number of corpses were seen rushing over here from a distance. They seemed to be following the orders of the great Corpse General. Don't panic, Axin, Ali, you deal with the corpses coming over. Asheruah ordered without panic. Her hair was already wet by the rain, and even the black veil seemed to be sliding down from her beautiful face. Perhaps because of the battle, she casually tore the veil off the ground, revealing a perfect face of white jade. This is not a completely Western face, and if you don't look closely, there is not much difference from an Oriental woman, but the eyes are particularly bright like stars, and the long eyelashes are now more wet, just like pear blossoms in the rain, so charming. When Tangmao was admiring the beauty, Asheruah was a little unhappy, but the situation at hand did not allow her to lose her temper. In particular, she felt that both Tangmao and Emofan were not weak in strength. He immediately turned to Tangmao and said, "If we join forces, we should be able to deal with him." Before Tangmao could respond, the short man hurriedly persuaded him, run quickly, the big corpse will definitely not be our opponent." It's not that he has a change of heart, but he knows that running for life alone in this rainy day is almost a dead end. If we run together, there may be a chance to survive. Chapter 141, Thunder Elemental Seed. Tangmao glanced at the nearby rotten corpses of slaves and the Corpse General who was being controlled by the ice lock and was trying to break free, and immediately responded, "It's just a Corpse General, why do we need to join forces? Stand behind me." Asheruah was stunned, and then her beautiful and graceful body disappeared strangely from the spot, and then appeared behind Tangmao. The moment the words fell, the star map appeared under Tangmao's feet, and thunder was all over his hands. Zixio. As Tangmao shouted, a thundercloud appeared above the head of the Corpse General. In addition to the relationship of thunder and lightning, the power of thunder exuded a terrifying aura. Thunder. Boom. Although the female corpse of the knife and axe had broken free from the ice lock, the sudden destructive thunder that fell was not something it could resist at all. Although it was only a mid-level magic, with the blessing of various advantages, its power was not weaker than the third-level mid-level magic. Boom boom. The moment the thunder struck the axe corpse, her body instantly disintegrated. Just one thunder. The female corpse was immediately dead. After dealing with the female corpse, Tang Mao did not stop. After all, there were still many slave level undeads rushing over from the other side. Seeing Mo Fan bombarding, Tang Mao walked over in a few steps. Purple sky domain. Boom 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 boom. The moment the domain was opened, all the undead who stepped into it immediately turned into residual souls and flew to Tang Mao. Mo Fan wanted to collect some, but the little loach obviously did not dare to compete with Tang Mao's kill and Jade. There was no reaction at all. Two intermediate magics solved the original crisis instantly. Ashurua looked at Tang Mao in disbelief. In her opinion, that domain should be at the level of a heavenly seed. Question mark? This information dealer has seen the world to some extent. It is obvious that violent destruction magic like Tang Mao is no longer something that a soul seed can possess. Of course, Ashurua didn't know that when it was a soul seed, its power was not much worse than it is now. After killing the big corpse general and a group of undead, Tang Mao looked at Mo Fan and said, "Go help them." Mo Fan nodded and immediately ran to help Ashurua's two followers. Ashurua came over, looked at Tang Mao and asked, "Is your thunder element a heavenly seed?" This little vixen was obviously different from before. Although she concealed it well, she was still very disgusted with Tang Mao in her heart just now. Tang Mao understood this. After all, staring at people there for no reason would naturally cause dissatisfaction. However, he didn't expect that after he made a move once, this little bitch's disgust would disappear. This is too realistic. Tang Mao shook his head and said, "It's a soul seed. However, it's better to be realistic. Otherwise how can you feel this small waist and this beautiful buttocks?" Ashurua obviously didn't believe it. Can the soul seed be so powerful? Do I need to lie to you? Tang Mao smiled and said. Ashurua thought so too. After all, they just met, and there was no dispute between them. There was no need to lie to her. But at the same time, she also knew that Tang Mao did not have to tell the truth. "You are very interesting." Hearing this familiar sentence, Tang Mao curled his lips. And Ashurua said again, "I don't know your name yet. Just call me husband." Hearing this, Ashurua smiled and said, "Hate you take advantage of others." After the short man came back to his senses, he stood by and watched the two flirting. He was really angry and envious. But at the same time, he dared not speak out. After all, Tang Mao's random thunder just now solved a large number of undead, which really scared him. Moreover, he understood why the boy interrupted him. He looked at Mo Fan with gratitude. When he saw that the army of undead had broken through the three people's resistance and rushed here, the short man hurriedly said, you two, can you deal with the undead first? They are rushing over." Of course, his tone was not that of command, nor was it accusatory, but pleading. "There is no way. They are strong. How can they not be timid?" Tang Mao, who was chatting happily with Ashurua, heard the words, looked back, and then said, "Ashurua, this name is good. I will engrave your name on my household registration book in the future." Ashurua paused after hearing the words, and her beautiful eyes were full of confusion. Tang Mao did not mean to explain. He had already taken action to deal with the undead. With Tang Mao taking action, she didn't need to worry about anything. In addition, she didn't understand what Tang Mao said just now, so she asked the short man. The short man explained with a painful look on his face, and he was extremely envious and jealous in his heart. Even though the crisis has not been resolved yet, the short man still fantasized in his heart that, if he could chat about life with such a vixen for a night, he would not hesitate to give up sex. After Ashurua learned the meaning, she sneered and muttered in a language that the short man could not understand. "What an interesting person, but if you want to be my man, it depends on whether you have the ability." The short man looked at Ashurua stupidly, and then looked at Tang Mao. Just like before, the undead that Mo Fan and his two followers could not solve were all solved under his thunder bombardment. The reason why Ashurua chatted with Tang Mao was actually mainly because of his strength. But she wanted Tang Mao to become her knight. Seeing that he was so powerful, Ashurua couldn't wait to conquer Tang Mao. As long as Tang Mao was willing to join them, his status in the future would definitely rise rapidly. When Ashurua was thinking about it beautifully, Tang Mao and his friends had already come over. After resolving the danger, Tang Mao asked the short man, "Where are we going now? It's raining so hard that I can't tell the place apart." The site was blocked, even if he was familiar with the place. However, in this situation, it was really hard to find a place. "It's going to be light soon. Let's take a rest here," Ashiruaya said at this time. Although it was very uncomfortable to be drenched in the rain, it was much better than walking blindly into the territory of the undead. Several people agreed to her proposal, and Tang Mao didn't care about it. A thin layer of ice appeared on his head, just blocking the rain. The ice layer was not that big, and if two people hugged each other, it could just block the rain. Tang Mao's strength could naturally create a larger ice layer. However, small has its own advantages. Turning to look at Ashiruaya, Tang Mao invited calmly, "Do you want to come over to avoid the rain?" Chapter 142. You are interesting. Hearing this, Ashiruaya did not hesitate, but shook her head and refused. "No, thank you." Tang Mao said again, "I won't take advantage of you." Ashiruaya had an expression of "I don't believe you." Along the way, this guy's eyes were almost on her. "Not taking advantage? Can you believe this? Question mark. Tang Mao saw that the little hoof did not come, so he had to give up. As for the other few people, he ignored them directly. It's okay to hug a girl, but men, of course, have to learn to be strong. After a while, a ray of light fell faintly, and the deathly aura also dissipated quickly. In fact, it was already dawn for a while, and the thick dark clouds and the continuous rain curtain made this morning come a little later. Looking at the already wet Ashiruaya, Tang Mao said, "Let's find a place to shelter from the rain first. The weather is so cold and the rain is so cold, it's easy to get sick." He didn't expect that this woman really didn't mean to come to shelter from the rain. She looks very coquettish, but she is also a chaste person. This is very difficult to deal with. Of course, even so, Tang Mao did not intend to waste his magic power to protect her from the rain. This is still far from Hua village. The strong man said, "Go to Kindling. There should be a cave there. Let's take shelter in the Kindling mountains first." The short man looked at the few people and suggested, "The Kindling monsters are not easy to deal with. Don't worry, I know a place where there are no monsters." The short man said. Immediately, several people chose to believe and followed the short man to Kindling. Kindling Mountain is like a sky screen, rising from the ground, majestic and imposing. It is difficult to find a cave in such a mountain. After all, it is a steep stone wall. Not all creatures can walk on the cliffs so freely. However, the short man led everyone into a stone cave, which was the kind that suddenly appeared halfway up the mountain wall. You need to climb up along the vines and layers of rocks. The short man pulled away the weeds growing at the entrance of the cave and explained to the few people that this was the residence of monster before. Later, they solved it, and now it seems that no other demons had discovered it. Of course, the short man brought them here because he saw how powerful Tang Mao was. Otherwise, he really didn't have this intention. After all, if a general level demon lived here, it would be very troublesome. Another follower of Ashiruaya, Axin, snapped his fingers, and a ball of fire danced on his fingertips. The flame illuminated the cave. Although there was some unpleasant smell inside, it was generally dry, which was much better than the cold and heavy rain outside. "I want to change clothes. Please stay outside." After arriving here, Ashiruaya looked at Tang Mao behind and said. The main reason was that she didn't think her two men could hold on, so she looked at Tang Mao and said something. "Don't worry, I never take advantage of others' misfortunes." Tang Mao looked like a gentleman and said in a light voice. Ashiruaya smiled charmingly, nodded to express her gratitude, and then walked in. When her two followers saw that Ashiruaya and Tang Mao had reached an agreement, they immediately stood guard at the entrance of the cave, determined not to let anyone go deeper. The cave was silent, except for the rustling sound coming from the depths of the cave, as if clothes were sliding across her soft and elastic skin. For a moment, Tang Mao felt that she could be a little more beastly. The short man was even more mean and wanted to take a sneak peek. However, there was shadow magic power protecting it, and he didn't care about anything after all. Tang Mao had already changed into a dry set of clothes at this time. Men, changing clothes is naturally more comfortable than women. After seeing Tang Mao change, several people also reacted and immediately changed their wet clothes. Tang Mao looked at several people, then smiled and said contemptuously, "Sure enough, you are all short brothers. Have you been freeloading all year round?" Although Mo Fan was very dissatisfied, compared with Tang Mao, it was really a little bit worse. The short man and the strong man turned around. After changing clothes, the short man looked at them and said, "These undead are poisonous. You must treat your wounds in time. Otherwise, those skin wounds will fester into a large area in less than a few hours." After treating their wounds, they sat down around the fire to rest. Ashiruya had also put on a veil again. This time it was a more charming purple, covering her stunning face, that could directly seduce people's souls. After sitting down again, the two continued the previous topic. Mo Fan also interjected from time to time, but this time his humor did not attract Ashiruya's attention. There was no way. Tang Mao was too dazzling, so he was ignored during the chat. Ashiruya talked about the forces behind her and asked Tang Mao if he was interested in joining. Ashiruya, who originally thought that she had a sure win, was suddenly rejected. Looking at the puzzled Ashiruya, Tang Mao said bluntly, "I just covet your body, but I'm not ready to be your younger brother. How dare you?" After hearing what Tang Mao said, Ashiruya's two followers scolded at the same time. Ashiruya paused, waved her hand to signal the two to shut up. Then she smiled and said, "You are really interesting." Tang Mao didn't care about the two followers at all, but looked at Ashiruya and said, "In fact, I can be more interesting. I wonder if you want to experience it?" Stinky hooligan looking at Tang Mao's appearance, you know that he must be holding back. Ashiruya said coquettishly, "I don't want to experience it. If you are willing to join us." Before Ashiruya finished speaking, Tang Mao waved her hand and interrupted, "No ifs, don't think about it." Seeing Tang Mao's decisiveness, not only Ashiruya was puzzled, but also the two followers behind her were full of doubts. "You know, this is Parthenon's invitation. The boy in front of him is not interested? Question mark?" One of the followers couldn't help asking, "Boy, do you know what kind of force Parthenon is?" "It doesn't matter whether you know it or not, I'm just not interested." The follower was a little angry. Tang Mao was the first one who dared to look down on Parthenon so much. "You Ali." As Ashiruya's shout came out, Ali quickly shut up. She didn't mind Tang Mao's attitude. Moreover, she was not a rigid person, and there was no such thing as awe. After all, Parthenon is no longer the same as before. However, Ashiruya did not talk to Tang Mao about these things afterwards, but talked about where to have fun in China, or asked about some things about the dead emperors before their death. Tang Mao responded to some of them, and the short man did it for him. It's not that he didn't want to respond, but the history here is still very different from what he knows. In fact, the main reason is that he doesn't know much, or he doesn't have time to learn about it. Day by day, he has almost no time to flirt with girls, so where does he get the time to learn about the history of the magic world? Moreover, when the short man was talking, Tang Mao was also very interested. Although this guy is wretched, it must be said that he knows a lot. It's just that he can talk about Aang Zeng, the founder of the dead, or the emperor of the Qing dynasty in the end. As for whether it is true or false, the short man said that he heard it. PS. Please subscribe, please reward, and please vote for the monthly ticket. In addition, thank you to the brothers who rewarded this week. I won't list them one by one, it takes up a lot of space. Chapter 143 The Lord of Disaster. It rained for 3 days in a row. Fortunately, this little fox girl was there to keep Tang Mao company. Otherwise, he might not be able to stay for a day. Although there was no actual progress, they could be considered friends to some extent. The rain has stopped. We can get on the road. The follower Ali came back from outside the cave and said to everyone, "Why, you still want to go to Hua village?" The short man looked at these people. "Of course we have to go," Mo Fan said. Ashiruya also nodded. Tang Mao lost interest because he knew that he would be separated from this little hoof after all. In this case, there is no need to go deeper, and it seems that the ancient capital has not been peaceful recently, right? Tang Mao said seriously, "I won't go. From now on, as long as you bring this garlic, it shouldn't be a big deal along the way." There have been incidents in several villages here, and I always feel something is wrong. I have to go back to the ancient capital. What is Zhang Xiao how to save? He came here to get to know Asher Ruaya. We have met and talked with each other, and it is almost time to say goodbye. There is no point in following them. Although Mo Fan really wants Tang Mao to be with him, what does it matter to him what happens in the ancient capital? He has never thought of being a hero, and he originally thought that Tang Mao should be the same kind of person as him. Now it seems that this is not the case. But Tang Mao is doing it for the greater good after all, and he really can't say anything. Then be careful. Tang Mao nodded, and when he was about to leave, the short man looked like he would take me with him. Obviously, he didn't want to move on. After all, who knows if it will rain in this damn weather? Without Tang Mao, the output machine, even if these people are not bad, what can they do? Even if Asher Ruaya is beautiful enough, what can she do? What's the point of having a life to think, but no life to practice? When he heard that the short man wanted to run away, Mo Fan grabbed him with the face of a profiteer and said, "You can leave, but give me back my money. Otherwise, keep walking." Let the short man return the money? That was worse than asking for his life. He could never accept it. So in the end, they left together and headed towards Hua village in front. As for Tang Mao, he went back to the ancient capital. According to the current situation, the Black Church has not taken action yet. At least the rain has not started yet. What Tang Mao has to do is to find the monk who made the rain. If he finds him, the danger of the ancient capital can be solved. He has no way to tell the high-level officials here that Seren is also here, waiting to watch her conferred god ceremony. However, he can capture the monk who made the special rain. Because it was daytime, there were no undead here, and with Xiao He as a means of transportation, Tang Mao came to the outskirts of the city in half a day. He did not intend to enter the city, but searched around in the nearby area. Of course, Tang Mao still did some disguises. He seemed to come here to play, and did not show the intention of looking for someone. However, when night fell, Tang Mao did not gain anything. Not to mention the bald donkey who made the Black Church rain. He didn't even meet a bald donkey. When night fell, he returned to the city. Because the undead have been making trouble recently, it is extremely dangerous outside the city at night. As the saying goes, a good tiger cannot stand up to a pack of wolves. Moreover, the most important thing is that a large number of undead will gather outside the ancient capital at night. Even the students of the academy here rely on killing these undead to get points and obtain resources. Tang Mao has no interest in this kind of thing, because it is just a small dish after all. He still needs to keep enough energy to search for the bald donkey who is preparing for the ceremony. Then Tang Mao left the outside and returned to the city. When night fell, the outer wall of the ancient capital was extremely lively. Various elemental magic energies were emitted from time to time. It has to be said that the humans living here are really tired. Because they have been wandering around for a day, Tang Mao soon covered his ears and fell asleep. In the next few days, Tang Mao searched for the monk who could make it rain every day, but no matter how he looked, there was no trace of him at all. It was as if the other party did not appear nearby at all, or he noticed it. Although there was no result for 3 consecutive days, Tang Mao did not give up. However, when he was about to leave the city on the 4th day, he saw Mo Fan and others coming back. The return of this kid was obviously not a good thing. Because, if I remember correctly, the night he returned seemed to be the time when the Black Church took action. After seeing Tang Mao, Mo Fan walked over and said, "Boss, what are you going to do?" Now that the monk could not be found, there was only one way to reduce casualties. That is to get Deacon Hujin out. However, he could not say all this. Zhang Xiaohao did not lose his memory. He just wanted to find the running dog of the Black Church here. Tang Mao did not waste words and went directly to the guy named Han Jun. Although he had never seen him, among these people, in addition to the monkey, the short man and Mo Fan, he was the only magician. Among you, there are dogs of the Black Church. After saying that, Tang Mao kicked him to the ground and stepped hard on his chest. After seeing this, the old village chief hurriedly said, "Misunderstanding, misunderstanding. Han Jun can't be a member of the Black Church. I can't be wrong about this disgusting smell." Tang Mao pretended to have a dog's nose, looking at Han Jun under his feet and said, "We will know if he is a dog of the Black Church after checking." After saying that, Tang Mao picked up the unconscious Han Jun, looked at Zhang Xiaohao, Mo Fan and a girl next to Zhang Xiaohao and said, "Follow me." He knew that Zhang Xiaohao was pretending now, and he also remembered that this guy seemed to have been cast under some evil spell. However, the amnesia was fake, but if he really thought of something, his life would be in an instant. "Shorty man, please take them to a safe place first." Before leaving, Tang Mao explained again. After saying that, he left here with a few people, heading towards the highest commander here, Han Ji. When they arrived in front of a courtyard, Tang Mao and his companions were stopped by two powerful mages. "Why is it you, a jerk?" Before Tang Mao could speak, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind him. Hearing this, Tang Mao and his companions all turned around and looked over. When Tang Mao saw the person coming, his eyes lit up. Chapter 144, Qualified Movie King. The person who came was ZHU Meng, who had made Tang Mao angry in Hangzhou. Although he was somewhat unhappy with him, it was just a personal matter. Moreover, as a counselor responsible for potential safety hazards, ZHU Meng's starting point was not wrong. It can only be said that he had his pet in mind. That's why Tang Mao was unhappy. Moreover, this guy was somewhat stupid. He would take the knife if someone gave it to him. Tang Mao said in a light voice, "ZHU Meng, this is the first time I feel that it is a particularly happy thing to see you." ZHU Meng heard this and was very upset. He was at least a counselor, so why was this kid so arrogant? However, even if he was unhappy, he still owed a favor for the matter in Hangzhou, so he immediately said, "Bastard, why don't you practice in the Magic City and come here? And what do you mean by being happy to see me? Black Church." When these three words came out, the two guards and ZHU Meng were stunned. Then, Tang Mao said, "Take us in first. I want to see Han Ji, the president of the Bell Tower Magic Association." When ZHU Meng heard the word Black Church, his expression became serious. He didn't have any good feelings for these guys who only knew how to do evil. In addition, Tang Mao had dealt with the Black Church several times in China, and he also knew about it. So ZHU Meng had no doubts, and walked into the courtyard with Tang Mao and the other four and the unconscious Han Jun. In fact, there were many people settled in the courtyard, most of them hiding in the house. The beautiful courtyard was filled with boxes of medicines, leaving only a path that people could barely walk through. Tang Mao asked ZHU Meng to collect Han Jun's blood, and ZHU Meng did not hesitate. It was a serious matter, and he could not care about anything. Moreover, the most important thing was that Tang Mao said that if this person was not a dog of the Black Church, he could take full responsibility. After arranging Han Jun, before the few people entered the house, a black-haired old man slowly walked out. ZHU Meng looked at Tang Mao, pointed at the old man and introduced him. "This is the President Han Ji. Tell me what you know." Tang Mao did not speak, but looked at Zhang Xiaohao, who was still pretending to be next to Mo Fan, and said, "Zhang Xiaohao, go to the president and tell me what you know." Zhang Xiaohao was stunned, and his eyes, which had originally been dull, actually regained some feeling. "How did you know?" Looking at Tang Mao, Zhang Xiaohao said in confusion, "I attacked a group of Black Church members before, and according to what they said, they were looking for you. Moreover, it is said that there are people from them around you. I think since they are looking for you, it means that you should know something. But there is a forgetfulness bug in your brain, so I brought you here. Because, except for President Han Ji, there should be no one else who can save you." Tang Mao said with a mixture of nonsense. Hearing this, Han Ji, the president of the Magic Association, had a flash in his eyes, stepped forward quickly, grabbed Zhang Xiaohao's wrist, and quickly tore his sleeve open. Suddenly, a black centipede-like mark appeared on Zhang Xiaohao's arm, as if embedded in the flesh, and looked extremely ferocious. "It's really a forget bug?" Han Ji exclaimed. The girl named Suzhao Luo and Mo Fan were also stunned. They didn't even notice that there was such a black centipede in Zhang Xiaohao's body. This black centipede had been lurking for an unknown period of time, and it was already as thick as a thumb. How terrible it is to have such a thing in a person's body. and Zhang Xiaohao also thought of something and suddenly said, "It's Muhi," and, ah. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly trembled violently, and then a pain that almost split his head came. Zhang Xiaohao seemed to be in great pain, and his lips were bitten to bleed. At this time, Hanji's body was covered with milky white light, and a healing fairy butterfly with extremely plump wings could be seen dancing on his old fingertips. With Hanji's gentle push, the healing fairy butterfly floated into Zhang Xiaohao's body and collided with the amazing black poisonous centipede. Zhang Xiaohao's skin was almost transparent. A poisonous thread like a worm's silk extended from his wrist to his shoulder, then to the back of his neck, and finally sank into the back of his head. Zhang Xiaohao seemed to have really heard some important news, but because of the forgetfulness worm, the harder he thought, the more his head felt splitting. Hanji hurriedly said, "Stop, you will die." Zhang Xiaohao did not mean to stop. With red eyes, he gritted his teeth and spat out a few words. "Rain, Black Church, Shaolin, in Seren City, undead. Stop, or you will die." Hanji roared. Although this information is very important, if this kid continues to talk, he will die. Zhang Xiaohao's memories of meeting the Sword and Axe Corps General are pouring in, like a dream that has been forgotten for a long time, but the more he thinks about it, the more his head feels like it will explode. Bang! Seeing that he had almost said it, Tang Mao knocked him unconscious with a knife. This kid is pretty good, so it's his turn to perform. After all, we can't let this kid die in vain. A royal guard mage walked in and said, reporting to the president, "There is indeed a member of the Black Church in Han Jun's body." Zhu Meng looked at Tang Mao and praised him happily. "You did a great job. We, many forces, have no idea what the Black Church has done, but you have found out so much." Zhu Meng suddenly stopped talking because he saw that Tang Mao was not excited at all. Instead, he looked indifferent. Similarly, Hanji and Mo Fan also found that Tang Mao's expression was a little solemn. At this time, Tang Mao started his performance and said anxiously, "If I'm not mistaken, the Black Church wants to use the evil abyss to destroy this ancient capital this time." Seeing that he was silent, several people looked at him. This sudden sentence can be said to be a bit shocking. Whether it was Hanji or Zhu Meng, two high-ranking big men, or Mo Fanji, they all couldn't believe it. Tang Mao turned to look at Mo Fan, and then said, "Remember the incident in Bo City? At that time, the Black Church used heavy rain to make the Demon Wolf clan violent, and then attacked the city. And now, there is another round of heavy rain. What does this mean?" Hearing this, Mo Fan's steps softened, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Hanji was a little puzzled and said, "But the undead are not demons. They will retreat underground during the day. With our defense force, it is not difficult to resist for a night. What if this rain can also make the undead not afraid of day and night? If so, then when a large number of undead attack from all directions, can the ancient capital still resist?" Tang Mao did not choose to talk about the more terrifying matter of Shaolin, but it is better to reveal what should be said first. Then, he said, "And I heard from that group of people before that Seren was mixed in the high-level officials of the ancient capital. I didn't believe it at first, but you should have heard it just now. Seren. In the city." What Zhang Xiaohao wanted to say desperately is clear enough. How is this possible? President Hanji shook his head in disbelief and muttered, "To be honest, if this is true, then the penetration of the Black Church is simply too terrifying." At the same time, a mysterious grey-white subordinate of Hanji suddenly appeared here. After looking at Tang Mao, he looked at Hanji and said, "What he said is true. My subordinate sent a message to tell me that Seren is in the city, and he is one of the high-level officials." Hanji clenched his fists, a little angry, but a little helpless, but still asked, "Is this news reliable?" Chapter 145, Relocation of the People. How Hanji hoped that his men would say that they were unreliable. Unfortunately, he also knew that his men's report of such news could not be false. The mysterious grey-white man nodded and said, "This news is absolutely impossible to be false." Hanji looked at Tang Mao and then said, "Then do you know who Seren is?" "How should I know?" Tang Mao shrugged and then said, "Besides, who Seren is now, does it matter? Now that it is certain that Seren is in the city, it means that the danger facing the ancient capital is definitely purgatory level. Before we are sure how to crack it, shouldn't we send people to relocate the people around the city now? He wasted so much acting skills. Wasn't it just to save some innocent people? Seren's plan has no possibility of being terminated, and the army of the undead is probably about to attack. In this case, even if there is a war, ordinary people in the weakest place must be relocated first. ZHU Meng gritted his teeth and said, but, if it's true as you guessed, if this rain can make the undead not afraid of the sun, how long can we hold out? I have a way. Maybe we can get a way to save them. Tang Mao thought for a while and said, but then he said, but this can only be used when it is a last resort. Right now, we should transfer ordinary people from the periphery. Hanji nodded and immediately gave the order. All the idle people who could be mobilized were mobilized. Especially those who lived outside the inner city wall. They were naturally the first to be mobilized. As for the matter of Seren, it was put aside for the time being. Of course, Muhi, who was the deacon of Hujin of the Black Church, was arrested. As a member of the Black Church, although he was ready to sacrifice himself at any time. However, he didn't expect that before their feast began, he would be wiped out. Moreover, the leader of the team was ZHU Meng and the guard mage. After Muhi was arrested, he was tortured. Although this did not allow him to reveal Seren's identity, it certainly did not allow him to be too relaxed. This arrest was carried out quietly, and no one knew that the chief deacon who contacted Seren was arrested. When night fell, most of the people in the outer city had been transferred to the inner city. Of course, there were still many people who were being transferred. Many people were puzzled by the sudden transfer of residents outside the inner city wall today. However, they were only responded to by orders from above. While some guards were still transferring people, Tang Mao and ZHU Meng came to the North Main Tower together. The North Main Tower is located at the North Outer City Gate. The tower is much larger than the corner tower. It is simply a majestic giant fortress standing on the city wall. Bastard, it seems that you have made a good estimate. Tonight is destined to be unfair. Looking into the distance, ZHU Meng said helplessly. Tang Mao sighed slightly, send a signal. The appearance of Xiaoyuan seems to show that the Black Church knows a lot. This kind of thing will summon many demons, even commanders and monarchs. As long as one rush is over, it will immediately destroy the outer city wall. Prepare for defense early. ZHU Meng nodded and immediately sent a signal to assemble. After a moment, many mages gathered here. Please ask the middle level and above mages to come to the tower. The other mages will stay where they are for the time being and wait for orders. A loud voice came out, echoing in the ears of everyone who came here. So, the sparse middle-level mages began to climb onto the tower and gathered in a hall on the tower. This hall was empty in front and back, so they could see the land outside the city shrouded in darkness at a glance. ZHU Meng looked at the people who came here and asked in confusion, are these the only ones? Hello, Mr. Senator. Hello, Senator. Some middle-level mages who often hang out here immediately greeted ZHU Meng with respect when they saw him. Tang Mao, who was following ZHU Meng, shocked everyone. After all, Tang Mao looked like a student, right? How could a student be next to a senior counselor? Mu Bei and Zhao Minimum, who were from Bo City and had been rescued by Tang Mao, were stunned when they saw Tang Mao there. Tang Mao naturally noticed them, but he didn't mean to say hello. After all, he was not very familiar with them. Moreover, he was thinking about one thing at this time, that is, how did the people of the Black Church do it? How could they make all these appear here accurately? I'm glad that everyone can come here, but I have to tell you a piece of unfortunate news. ZHU Meng said expressionlessly to the people who came. While saying this, he stepped on his tall black boots and walked towards the edge of the hall, standing at the fence carved with dragons and phoenixes. There is a demon abyss 30 kilometers to the north. When talking about the word devil abyss, ZHU Meng sighed a little, as if he didn't even want to mention this word. Shaolin? How could such a thing appear here? A hunting mage exclaimed. The horror of Shaolin is known to everyone who lives here. But who would have thought that this thing would appear in the city? Question mark. So, are we summoned here to resist Shaolin? Shaolin is something that cannot be resisted at all, not to mention that we are just some mid-level mages. Someone said with a hint of panic. Where Shaolin appears, there will be a strong aura of death. It will not be long before many warlord level undead and lord level undead gather there. I hope everyone present will stay here on the tower tonight. Once the group of high level undead have the intention to approach here, everyone must destroy them. ZHU Meng shook his head and responded loudly. As long as you are not going to investigate Shaolin, I have no problem at all. A student said. Don't worry, Senator. We may not be able to compete with the huge Shaoyuan, but if there are demons that use Shaoyuan to cause chaos, we will definitely eradicate them. This is the duty of us mages. I have no problem with this. I'm willing to guard all night. Count me in. Count me in too. When the mages heard that they were not asked to cause trouble for Shaoyuan, they were relieved. As for guarding the city, they didn't have any resistance. Since everyone appeared in this area, they naturally wanted to destroy the undead. There was no problem at all helping the government to guard the night. There were more than 40 middle level mages and 4 or 5 high level mages present. With the combat effectiveness of this group of people, they could definitely fight against the commander level undead even if they appeared. After all, everyone knew that, if the city could not be saved, their families would become the feast of the undead raw! Exclamation mark. Just when everyone expressed their willingness to contribute, a roar came from the dark sky in the north, shaking the steel wall violently. This terrifying roar was deafening. At the same time, Tang Mao, who was thinking, as well as Councillor ZHU Meng, Chief Instructor Fijio, and General Lu Zhu of the North Wall, all changed their expressions. They turned around and stared at the dark giant in the distance with horror. It's him again. It wants to use the death energy brought by the evil abyss this time, to gather more undead and break through the northern wall in one fell swoop. ZHU Meng said angrily. It's not good. This dead king already rules over tens of millions of undead armies. Now with the help of the evil abyss, it will be even more unstoppable. We must request reinforcement. The military staff said. It's already difficult to dispatch personnel. General Lu Zhu said in a calm voice. ZHU Meng's face was a little solemn. He looked at Lu Zhu beside him and asked, have all the people in the North City district been relocated? Lu Zhu shook his head and said helplessly, not yet. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 146, Rejection. It seems that we must implement the plan we made before. ZHU Meng frowned and said. Although they plan to withdraw to the inner city for defense, it seems that the decapitation plan still needs to be implemented. Because only in this way can we buy enough time for the people in the outer city to move. The most important thing is that ZHU Meng is really worried that this is just the beginning. After tonight, this battle will continue endlessly. Mr. Congressman, it is too dangerous to do this. If we are not careful, we will be trapped in the army of undead. The staff officer next to him said with some concern. Staff Officer ZHU, the city where I, ZHU Meng, am in will never allow a demon to cause chaos. We do not have enough troops to resist the large-scale gathering of undead this time, but we have the opportunity to kill this undead monarch. ZHU Meng responded righteously. The reason why ZHU Meng has the highest position in the entire National Magic Association is not because of how many families he controls, or how many forces are secretly supporting him, but because whenever hidden dangers emerge, this congressman always takes the lead, which is something that other congressmen who have long been corrupt, and talk about war on paper on their high conference benches cannot do. This courage has made him the current position. Similarly, it was also because of this that Tang Mao did not bother him too much about the matter of Hang Zhao. No, this is absolutely not possible. Once you fail, who will command the northern city wall? I'm afraid that it will cause chaos. This ZHU staff officer may be a little timid, but his worries are not unreasonable. After all, this is a battle with the army of the undead. Then what can you do to stop the offensive of the ghost tyrant? ZHU Meng asked back. How about adding me? When ZHU staff officer was about to speak, a sword-browed man wearing black long wool yarn came out from among the many mages who had gathered, with a calm but confident smile on his face. Hearing this, everyone present looked over, especially those members of the Hunter Alliance who seemed to recognize this person at a glance, and they all showed surprise. The person who came was naturally the Hunter King Duzaro. At this time, Tang Mao also said, "I can also help in hunting down the ghost tyrant." Tang Mao's sudden words puzzled several big men present, including the Hunting King Duzaro who had just come over. At this moment, everyone present had only one thought in their minds. Is this kid a fool? ZHU Meng was the first to speak and scolded. Nonsense. Even if you are talented, you are just a student. Without that snake, how can you help? Tang Mao shrugged and said, the loss of the black snake does not mean that I can't do anything. Besides, who told you that I'm a mid-level mage? It's up to you. Let me go. I can guarantee that you will not lose your arms and legs. If you don't believe it, forget it. The reason why Tang Mao wanted to help was just because he didn't want these guys to get hurt. After all, there was a bigger war waiting later. But if they didn't believe it, he naturally didn't bother to explain anything. If I go to help myself, I can't beg them, right? Hearing this, ZHU Meng was stunned, and then pulled Tang Mao aside. Boy, do you have any trump cards? Is there a way to summon the black snake? Tang Mao shook his head and responded, I can't summon it. Then why are you making trouble? Hearing this, ZHU Meng roared. Tang Mao's mouth twitched slightly. Although he wanted to help, ZHU Meng didn't trust him. Although he was not a superclass magician, his current thunder magic destruction energy could definitely cause damage to it. When ZHU Meng was teaching Tang Mao a lesson, several superclass magicians had already begun to make plans. There are a group of bone generals, corpse generals, and ghost generals around the ghost tyrant. The bone generals and corpse generals are just like cockroaches blocking the road for us, and we can just step on them directly. But the group of white ghosts commanded by the ghost minister will cause us a great mental shock if there are so many of them. If I'm not confused, there are no spiritual practitioners among us, right? Said the military commander Luzu. This is the biggest obstacle for us to kill the ghost tyrant. We must clear it no matter what. It is the most difficult one to overcome in our original plan, but ZHU Meng stroked his beard and said, paused, turned around, and looked at the more than 40 mages who could be mobilized at will. Then he said, I'm sorry, everyone. The current situation is more serious than what we just said. I need you to help us kill the ghost tyrant. Of course, the ghost tyrant will be dealt with by us superclass mages. What you have to do is to clear the biggest obstacle for us, that is, the white ghost minister and its group of white ghosts. Seeing everyone silent, Tang Mao curled his lips and spoke first. It's easy to clear those obstacles. I'll go. Is there anyone else who takes the initiative? Congressman ZHU Meng has taken the lead, and this little brother is so courageous. How can we, who have lived for half of our lives, retreat? Soon, a hardcore retired military mage stood up. Behind this wall is a city where my parents, wife, and children live. So, please count me in. I don't trust others with such a difficult task. A hunting mage with a scar on his face stood up with full courage. After Tang Mao stood up, one by one, two by two stood up. After they stood up, the military department arranged some high-level mages. In addition to Tang Mao and other mid-level mages who were summoned, there were nearly 200 military mages to cooperate with this operation. From beginning to end, Tang Mao was classified as a mid-level mage. There was no way. Tang Mao was a self-awakening magician, and he never liked to wear any signs. As a result, no one knew that he was already a high-level magician. Tang Mao was too lazy to explain. In fact, compared to fighting with the commander level undead, he wanted to meet these monarch level ones more. After all, the commander level opponents were not enough for him to fight. Especially now it was still night. It can be said that he didn't even need to take action. Just relying on Zhao Hei and the eldest daughter was enough to kill a bloody way out. After the strategic plan was finalized, ZHU Meng turned around and looked at Du Zhao's helper Yaonan and said to him, Yaonan, you will lead this group of assembled mages. Make sure that the light mage core will not be attacked by any undead before the magic circle is completed. No problem. Yeonan smiled and saluted. After agreeing, Yeonan began to count the number of people. He also has a lot of prestige among the hunting mages. Those hunters are very willing to listen to his orders. Most of the mages gathered this time are hunting mages. The remaining students, people from the association, and mages without specific power know that he is a high-level mage, and of course they will not have any objections. Of course, in fact, he is more curious about Tangmao. After all, the first reaction of most people to challenge the monarch is to refuse. But this kid is so good that he actually asked for it. Yeonan didn't think Tangmao was just pretending. After all, who would have nothing to do and pretend to be proud of his own life? But at the same time, this is also something that Yeonan is very puzzled about. Tangmao is just a small mid-level mage. How dare he? He naturally knew something about the matter of the black snake in Hangzhou. Although ordinary people didn't know about the black snake and Tangmao. However, people like them still had some sources of information. The black snake, which was one of the best among the monarchs, would listen to him. Someone who could command a monarch level snake must have some extraordinary qualities. After counting the number of people, the demon man said to everyone, "Next, I will appoint Tangmao as the deputy captain of this operation." Hearing this, some hunters expressed their dissatisfaction, although they admired Tangmao's courage and fearlessness of death. But, it doesn't mean that he can command them just because of this, right? Chapter 147 Leaving the city. Tangmao was a little annoyed by the crowd's nagging, and immediately called out the eldest daughter. The moment the eldest daughter appeared, a feeling of frost came out. When this cold breath emerged, not only did the crowd who had just been nagging shut up, but Zhu Meng and others also looked over with shock. Feeling the cold breath coming from the snow girl, Zhu Meng said in surprise, "You bastard, you are a commander level contract pet. You are a high level mage. Nonsense. Otherwise why do you think I dare to go to trouble the monarch with you?" Tangmao shrugged, then looked at the assembled mages, and said in a calm voice, "Do you have any opinions now?" No. The crowd who were just opposing shut up in an instant. Zhu Meng and several super level bosses were surprised. However, the surprise was only for a moment. Tangmao is a high level mage, which is a good thing for them. After calming down for a while, Zhu Meng immediately ordered, "Okay, everyone, get ready to go." The continuous black clouds bordered the land ruled by the undead in the endless distance. The huge shadow at the border was constantly approaching. Just like the scene at the beginning, there were tides of undead around it, as if preparing for a war between the undead and humans. The longer the evil abyss appeared, the greater the resentment and death it created. It was so huge that some rotten corpses, skeletons, and evil ghosts that originally needed to ferment for a few years were qualified to advance in advance. Those ministers of the undead who originally needed to sleep for another 10 or 100 years also opened their coffins and appeared in this increasingly cold world. Undead creatures pay more attention to their ranks. Those with higher ranks can call low-level undead at will. Low-level undead themselves have no brains and nothing to do. If there is a voice guiding them to do something, they will be very happy to use it. There is no fear, no death, only endless greed and desire for living things. After walking forward for a while, Tangmao and the floating snow girl beside him noticed a slight movement at the same time and looked around the cold black soil with vigilant eyes. "Pay attention, there is something." It didn't crawl out. The demon man waited for a while and saw that no undead jumped out of the loose soil, so he prepared to let everyone move forward. Tangmao also nodded, and then he continued to move forward with about 30 mid-level mages. After another period of moving forward, they felt more and more dead air. Everything they could see was swallowed up by the black tide. The tide was completely composed of those black corpses. It seemed that the resentment generated by the evil abyss provided them with good nutrients. Every corpse was like wearing black armor and turned into a well-trained army. Looking at this army of undead, Tangmao and the demon man had not yet made a move. "Kill, kill." The cross-scarred man behind him shouted to encourage morale, and the ice star map had already appeared under his feet during the high roar. He jumped up and jumped into the ice chains flying in front of him. He stepped on these ice chains flying forward and showed a solemn and unrestrained manner. He and his ice chains were the first to kill the black corpses. The black corpses were so vast that you couldn't see the end of their army at a glance. Not everyone could be so murderous when facing such a huge group of corpses. The encouragement of the cross-scarred man was indeed effective. Seeing that this ice mage was so brave, others also showed their different understandings of their own magic and began to fight with these black corpses. If you die, you should be buried in the ground and rot into nutrients for plants. Don't run out to harm the living, said a heroic female mage with a thick robe flying all over her body. The soil where her index finger pointed would immediately grow a magic vine as thick as a wrist. The magic vine was covered with dense thorns and barbs. If it was entangled with the body of a demon, it would definitely make it peel off a layer of skin. However, these undead who were not afraid of pain did not care so much. Even if their bodies were strangled in two, their upper bodies would still crawl with their sharp claws, as if they would win, as long as they crawled in front of the living creatures. As a result, the magic vine female mage stepped on their heads with a high boot and broke them open. Seeing that several people in the team had already started to take action, Tangmao naturally could not just focus on collecting residual souls. Speaking of which, he was the boss now. Thunderbolt. When drawing the star map, Tangmao merged with the snow girl and flew directly into the air. Although he had awakened the wind system, he had not had time to practice it yet. So flying naturally depended on the help of the snow girl. Dance. After reaching the air, Tangmao sent a thunderbolt straight down. The dense army of undeads was blasted into slag by Tangmao's thunderbolt within a circle. Even the warlord level undeads mixed and it was still the same. Purple sky domain. Then Tangmao jumped into the center of the circle of thunderbolts. When the undeads rushed over like they didn't care about their lives, he directly released his domain. Boom boom, the domain was opened, and the undeads that rushed in were instantly slags without a trace left. The demon man who had just flown up was stunned when he saw that Tangmao had solved nearly 200 undeads in this wave. Suddenly, he seemed to understand that this kid was really confident when he said he wanted to challenge the monarch. At least his soul seed was much stronger than his own. Of course, in the demon man's understanding, it was the soul seed. After smashing a large wave with one blow, Tangmao rushed forward again. These undeads are not powerful in other aspects, but the speed of condensing spirits is really powerful. This spirit is naturally a good thing. Whether it is to resist the backlash of demons or to strengthen stars, it is the best thing. Tangmao will never have too much of such things. After releasing a wave of thunder magic, there are still many undeads rushing over. When the thunder field dissipated, the temperature dropped instantly. Then, Tangmao released a mid-level magic, and another large number of undeads were solved. Looking at the 400 undeads that were cleared in an instant, the demon man couldn't help but secretly surprised and said, "This guy's almost as powerful as an army." At this time, he saw a war general level undead and immediately looked at Tangmao and said, "There is a shrouded corpse chasing us at 5 o'clock. You go and solve it." Tangmao nodded when he heard it and then rushed to the place where the demon man said. He didn't think about anything, such as the problem that the demon man didn't move, and asked him to go. Because this is already a battlefield, as long as the other party is not blindly commanding, there was no need for him to disobey. Moreover, what the demon man had to do was to command the whole team. Unless the leader level ghost appeared, he was only responsible for command. The demon man did not send anyone to help, and it was obvious that Tangmao did not need it at all. With his explosive power, one person could take on the entire team. If the direction of the army's advance was 12 o'clock, the 5 o'clock direction was basically behind him. There was still a group of rotten corpses behind him, but they were scattered. After all, this team of mid-level mages with amazing destructive power had just passed by here. The rotten corpses that could survive the bombardment were the combat corpses of the rotten corpses. However, Tangmao naturally didn't care what kind of corpse it was. Anyway, they were all undead. The undead were the material for condensing his spirit. Needless to say, after rushing over, Tangmao was bombarded with magic. Shadow system, fire system, thunder system, ice system. To deal with the slave level undead, it was only the primary magic, and it was easily solved. and the general level, a mid-level magic came down, and it directly made him kneel. In just a few breaths, Tang Mao solved the problem, then turned around and chased after the main force. PS. Please subscribe, please vote, please reward. Chapter 148, One Thought Star Map. When Tang Mao was chasing the main force, he saw the corpses flooding over like a tide. At this moment, he no longer dared to bombard them like before, because he knew that, even if his magic power recovered quickly, it was still nothing in front of the endless undead. If he used primary magic, although the lethality was limited, and he could not kill a large number of monsters in 1 second, he could still kill 4 or 5 at a time. Moreover, the magic power consumed by primary magic was not much. With his recovery speed, plus several systems used in turn, even if he fought for 3 days and 3 nights, the magic power would not be consumed too much. After cleaning up a wave, Tang Mao found the main force. They seemed to be in trouble, although Tang Mao had not been back and forth for 5 minutes. However, there were still a large number of undead surrounding here. There were hundreds of them in several directions. It happened that there were several thunder mages in this team. Although their magic was not as terrifying as Tang Mao's, they helped Tang Mao. Thunderbolt. Yaksha. When the dense undead were about to form an encirclement, Tang Mao used a group attack skill to bomb them out. Boom boom. As the power of the purple thunder spread, all the undead in this area turned into residual souls in an instant and flew into Tang Mao's killing jade. A hunter who was ready to cover Tang Mao's rear and support him stared and saw that the rotten corpses were killed in pieces about 300 meters behind him. He couldn't help but open his mouth and muttered to himself for a long time, "This person is as fierce as a tiger, comparable to a large team. Yeah, if I fell behind like this, I would be eaten by the undead in minutes." No wonder this guy has the courage to apply for a fight with the monarch. He has the strength to do so. Seeing the continuous destruction magic blasting out, although it was only mid-level magic, its power was comparable to high-level magic. This dangerous job, that was originally a rear guard, suddenly became nothing after Tang Mao rushed back quickly. The demon man hovered in the air above the entire advancing team. After seeing Tang Mao coming back, he stared ahead. In the dense black corpse army, he finally saw a large group of ghost-like creatures wearing white ghost clothes. They were floating in the air like ghosts. And this time, their target was this group of ghost-like things. Immediately, the demon man gave an order, and the team began to move forward at full speed. The fire mage became the main force of the entire team. The large-scale and powerful fists blasted towards those black creatures, and blood and flesh flew everywhere. The flames smashed one pit after another on the charred land. In the tide of black corpses, human mage teams can be seen in different directions. The constantly shining magic halo is the most vivid flag, telling the mage teams scattered in different areas that they are converging towards their destination. In the intermediate realm, fire mages eventually occupy a relatively large proportion. The number of awakened fire mages is not as rare as that of lightning mages. At the same time, it is the most powerful and wide-ranging magic in this large-scale war. Therefore, when the armies began to converge, you could see patches of bright red fire blankets, as if paving a bright road for everyone. The undead are most afraid of light, followed by fire. Where the fire is burning, the slave level undead will walk into it without thinking, and the result is that they will be burned. Look at the other teams, they are almost there. Look at you, the demon man said with some dissatisfaction. Although he was a little dissatisfied with what he said, no one was forcing him at this time. After all, this is a battlefield now. This is not a joke. If a team makes a mistake, it is likely to lead to the annihilation of the entire army. When they were about to arrive, suddenly a large group of black mist rose from the black corpse group in front of them. The black mist rolled over like a sandstorm, and the target was the assembled mages who had not yet arrived at the strategic location. From the demon man, he could see that the corpse army was making way for the thing that rolled up the black sandstorm. Something big is approaching. A Sky Eagle mage who was responsible for delivering the message in the air suddenly shouted. The Sky Eagle mage had just sounded the alarm, and a flesh-colored tentacle-like thing in the black sandstorm penetrated into the air at a very fast speed. At the same time, Tang Mao, who was just rushing over, suddenly appeared in front of the Sky Eagle mage. Silent thunder deathlight. Boom. Then, bursts of thunder sounded, and the strange thing, that looked like a long tongue, an arm, and more like a tumor, that could be infinitely extended attacked, and directly touched the thunder. Then with a bang, it exploded instantly. Uh-oh. This sudden explosion caused the newly appeared commander level undead to be severely damaged, before he even had time to show himself. However, there was no contact, and Tang Mao had no intention of holding back against this kind of thing. After all, if it lives one more second, it may be a disaster for their team. Tang Mao was surrounded by lightning flashing, dazzling. The constellation Radiance with lightning reached its peak, and suddenly all the lightning turned into a beam. There was only one beam, which was suddenly shot out, and flew hundreds of meters away in an instant. The lightning beam was filled with unparalleled electric shock penetration. Although the undead corpse minister had already sensed the danger, it could not avoid it at all. Or rather, it was inevitable. Boom boom. When the thunder entered its body, the command level corpse minister instantly broke into pieces and exploded in the air. The Sky Eagle Mage stared at the scene in front of him and couldn't believe that this young man was so fierce. If you want to deal with such a commander level corpse minister, at least 4 or 5 high level mages are needed, right? Moreover, each of them has some means, otherwise, killing is almost unimaginable. However, this young man who suddenly appeared here actually bombed the opponent with a high level magic. The demon man behind was also shocked. He was not shocked by Tang Mao's explosive output, but this guy was not only a high level summon, but also a high level thunder system. Moreover, the destructive power of this thunder seems to be comparable to the power of high level perfect magic, right? Is this a human? The deputy captain is mighty. Brothers, rush over together. Go, kill these black dumplings. If I go back alive, I might be on the list of the dead. Ha ha ha. Some people were shocked by Tang Mao's operation, and some admired him. Even the moment Tang Mao killed the corpse minister, it instantly boosted the morale of the entire team. They are not so unbearable. Although this is the terrifying strength of Tang Mao, but as a team, this is also their honor. For a while, those who had no confidence just now were determined to win. They were very good at drawing their own star maps. Although there were many undead blocking the road, the command level and general level undead were all cleaned up by Tang Mao and Yeo Nan. The remaining servant level undead were naturally nothing to them. During this charge, Tang Mao originally planned to use only elementary magic to save mana. However, after the appearance of this corpse minister and his death, he ignored the idea of saving mana. Moreover, there might be countless undead queuing to send the residual soul. While killing, Tang Mao found that he could actually think of the star map without realizing it. You know, the star map is much more troublesome than the star track. After all, 7 star tracks can form a star map, but now Tang Mao can do it in just one thought. Even big guys like ZHU Meng and Du Zio can only do this after they reach the super level magician, right? Fighting is the best way to improve strength. This is indeed not just talk. Chapter 149 The Terror of the Great Commander. Seeing that the light exorcism magic array had been activated, the demon man shouted to Tang Mao, "Retreat." Tang Mao shook his head and said, "You retreat first, don't worry about me." In the air, after rejecting the demon man's call, Tang Mao looked at the ground, only to see that the number of rotten corpses had hardly decreased, while the number of corpses was constantly increasing. Looking further away, among the dense undead army, you can see several creatures as big as hills. Their roars can be heard at the location of the city wall tens of kilometers away. Every time they release a skill, it will bring about the shaking of the sky and the collapse of the earth. The command level undead, those commander level undead giants generally stand in the densely packed army. The magic in the sky presents different death rainbows that fall on the commander level undead, but it only makes its body sway a little. When he saw 6 or 7 high level mages besieging a towering bone minister, he could feel the destructive breath coming from a distance. The high level magic that fell on the towering bone minister could not shake it at all. When the towering bone minister roared and shot out thousands of arrows from his body, a team of mid-level mages rolled up a large blood mist. I don't know how many mages were directly stabbed to death. After seeing this scene, Tang Mao flew over directly, because he saw that among the high-level mages besieging the towering bone minister, 2 were high-level wind mages. They couldn't beat them and could run away. However, they didn't run away and continued to fight there. After a contest at this time, the 7 people felt somewhat powerless. After Tang Mao arrived, lightning flashed in his hand, and he himself rushed straight to the towering bone minister. "Don't get close to it, it's dangerous," a high-level wind mage behind him shouted hurriedly. After watching Tang Mao rushing away, Tang Mao ignored it. The lightning constellations around him continuously condensed the energy of lightning attributes. Wherever he flew, there was a burst of thunder. When he was about to get close, less than 10 meters away, Tang Mao blasted out the thunder in his hand in an instant. Swish! The beam of thunder seemed to be accumulating power. The moment it flew out, it was like a piercing through the sky. Puff! When it hit the body of the towering bone minister, the thunder rubbed for a moment, and then boomed and exploded in his body. But the great commander of the towering bone minister was different from the corpse minister who was killed by Tang Mao before. Although he was injured, he managed to withstand the bombardment of thunder. Then, the towering bone minister roared, and then thousands of arrows of bones burst out of his body and rushed straight towards Tang Mao. Ice crystal defense. Bang 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 when its bone arrow shot, or thick ice wall appeared in front of Tang Mao. Although every arrow seemed to penetrate the ice wall was still intact, until the last arrow was blocked. Behind Tang Mao, the 2 high-level wind mages and several high-level mages on the ground all twitched their mouths. Because no matter how they looked at it, this kid didn't look like a person. While resisting the attack of the towering bone minister, Tang Mao also began to depict the ice constellation. Ice crystal spear. An ice crystal spear full of extreme cold power was thrown out in one breath with the cooperation of Tang Mao and the snow girl. Before the towering bone minister could react, the ice crystal spear penetrated again to the place where Tang Mao had just attacked. Bang! First, he took a destructive magic, and then a joint attack from Tang Mao and the snow girl, breaking the defense instantly. But the commander-in-chief is the commander-in-chief after all. He took 2 killing moves from Tang Mao in a row, but he still didn't fall to the ground. However, the high-level mages here are all elite among the military mages, and they are not just eating melons. When Tang Mao's attack was over, high-level magic of ice, wind, and fire, with the joint efforts of several high-level magicians, bombarded the part that broke the defense. Boom! This time, the attacks of several people were no longer without any effect. This time, the towering bone minister was directly bombarded to the point where there was no dregs left. After dealing with the towering bone minister, a high-level wind mage came to Tang Mao and asked if he was injured or anything. Tang Mao shook his head and said that he was fine. However, after fighting with this commander-in-chief, Tang Mao felt a little uncomfortable. He thought that he could fight against the monarch, but this naked slap in the face came a little too fast. But then again, if there was no demon system as a backup, he would not choose to rush. The power of the demon system showed a different kind of tyranny when it was the 4th system. Although it was not used, Tang Mao still remembers that feeling. Moreover, now that he has been promoted to a high level and has an additional elemental pet, plus the support of 7 systems, Tang Mao has the confidence to fight against any enemy that is not at the Emperor or Forbidden Spell level. But just as Tang Mao was thinking, and several high-level mages were cleaning up the little undead, the dark cloud suddenly flashed with golden light, and the golden light penetrated the deathly aura that permeated everywhere and fell down, exchanging for an empty and clear space. The next moment, a golden giant sword fell from the sky. That was a sacred sword composed entirely of golden light. The sword was so big that it seemed to stand between heaven and earth. The golden light before was released by this huge sword of light. But, there was another trembling sound of heaven and earth. The sacred sword that fell from the sky was inserted straight upside down and landed on a great commander level undead whose breath was not weaker than that of the towering bone minister not far away. The sword of heaven and earth stood up with a buzz. The undead commander, who was originally invincible, suddenly had no signs of life and turned into a pile of abandoned white bones. Feeling the powerful light attribute magic damage, Tang Mao was surprised. His magic power was enough to destroy, but compared with superclass magic, there was still some gap. However, it was normal to think about it. After all, he was only at the 1st level of high level. If the thunder system reached the second level of high level power, I'm afraid it would not be much inferior to his. Hunting King Duzao and his men have started to attack. Boom boom, Councilman ZHU Meng has also attacked. Buzz buzz. After the teams completed their mission, several superclass mages also attacked separately and killed some of the threatening great commanders of the undead here in seconds. Then, they went straight to kill the dead king. Several high-level military mages also dispersed to the other places to help those military mage teams clear the road. Tang Mao was not a military man, nor did he belong to any force. It was already very kind to help them. Naturally, no one would say anything about this. Moreover, on the way back to the city, he also killed a lot of demons. Of course, watching the weather change, Tang Mao also looked around from a high place. The moment this violent rain, that urged the undead to fight to the death fell, the disaster really began. However, no one knew where the deadbolt donkey of the Black Church was hiding. When Tang Mao returned to the city wall, cold rain fell at the same time, hitting the vast land that had already been littered with corpses. The night had not yet ended, and the mages guarding the city wall were having a hard time. They would rather wear straw raincoats and raincoats than any mages would really support a magic for the rain. It was just that the coldness at the edge of 0 degrees was really unbearable, not to mention the mages who were still fighting with the ghost tyrant more than 20 kilometers away. Moreover, Tang Mao was sure that the beginning of this rain meant that the crisis had really arrived. He did not continue to watch the battle in the distance here, but walked towards the city. At this time, the only thing he could do was to see if all the people in the outer city had entered the barrier of the inner city wall. Although they had experienced a day and a night of migration, the ancient capital was so big. How could they all be transferred to the inner city wall in such a short time? Just when Tang Mao was about to help, he suddenly thought of something. This rain seemed to start from the city. Question mark? Saving people here is not enough, and he has been searching for so many days just to save a few people. You know, he is running to save the people of the entire ancient capital, so he is tired like a dog every day looking for the bull donkey of the Black Church. As long as he finds the bull donkey and kills him, the rain will be out of control. Then the undead will fade away during the day, giving them a chance to breathe. Although I don't know if this can avoid a disaster, I have to give it a try. Chapter 150. The crisis has just begun. Whether or not he could find it, Tang Mao just relied on luck. But if he didn't find it, he couldn't do anything. He just knew that Hanji's men were helping the people to migrate. Otherwise, Tang Mao really wanted him to help. After all, the ancient capital is too big. Just when he had no place to look for people, he suddenly remembered something. Bo City is the place for testing, and it seems that the people who were tested there are Muhi and the bold donkey who controls the rain, right? In other words, if this bold donkey is in the city, then he is naturally related to Muhi. Immediately, Tang Mao found the place where Muhi was imprisoned. Of course, asking Muhi such a question would definitely not get any answer. Tang Mao came to a place where they searched and investigated Muhi and asked them that Muhi had indeed contacted a monk. When he got the other party's exact location, Tang Mao was going to look for people. At this time, Hanji just came here and saw Tang Mao was in a hurry to leave and asked in confusion, "Tang Mao, what are you going to do?" Seeing that it was Hanji who was a little mentally disturbed, Tang Mao stopped and said, "I told you before that there are people in the Black Church who can perform rain control. Now, I seem to have found the location of this person." Hanji had just investigated the rain and indeed found the problem. Now hearing Tang Mao say this, he really felt a glimmer of hope. "Are you serious?" Regarding Hanji's inquiry, Tang Mao, who was not very sure, could only shake his head and said, "I don't know, but if it is true, I will definitely solve him." Hanji paused. If he can control the rain, how can his strength not be weak? Although Tang Mao has excellent talent, he is just a high-level mage. He feels a little unreliable. Hanji immediately said, "Do you want me to assign some people to you?" Tang Mao himself was not sure where could Hanji mobilize manpower for him. The most important thing is that, if he finds the wrong person, then Hanji can at least save more people. No need. If the person I found is the guy who controls the rain, I will definitely bring him back. Hanji was a little puzzled and said, according to what you said, the other party must be strong. Are you really okay? I have my own way. Tang Mao nodded and replied. This kind of thing is not a joke. The most important thing is that it concerns the life and death of a resident of the ancient capital. If it were any other high-level magician, he really thought it was unreliable, but since Tang Mao said so, Hanji was willing to believe it was true. He also hoped that this was true. After all, he really had no one to use now. Under the hazy rain curtain, the great tower stood in the middle of the long city wall. I don't know how many years of wind and rain have made it settle down to such a vicissitudes of color. There are still many magicians guarding the city wall. They listen to the bells coming from afar and pray that the day will come earlier. The rain always delays the morning light. Perhaps some magicians who fight outside will never come back because of this weather. On the city wall, ZHU, who had been paying attention to the battlefield in the distance, looked at an officer who was running over and asked, "What's going on? Why are you so panicked?" A team was surrounded by a group of skeletons. They need support, but we can't dispatch anyone now, the officer reported. ZHU sighed and said, "There's nothing we can do. There are no mages available here now. We can only hope that they can hold on until dawn." At this moment, ZHU found that the battle in the distance seemed to be over. He was so anxious that he finally smiled. It can be seen that he was worried about this all night. Now that the crisis is over, he said excitedly, the ghost tyrant has been killed, and our large army is withdrawing to the city wall. After all, several superclass mages have been dispatched. If something goes wrong, they will suffer huge losses in the north. Very good, very good, very good. ZHU saw that the large army began to return one after another, and he shouted excitedly. The remaining military commanders around him were also dancing with excitement. For more than a month, they had been worried about the ghost tyrant every night on the north wall. This cruel undead was the creature that posed the greatest threat to the north wall, and there were several times when it almost caused a large gap in the wall. Now that this biggest hidden danger has finally been eliminated, the guards of the north wall can breathe a sigh of relief. Similarly, the dawn was also late. Seeing this scene, the people on the north wall shouted in unison, welcoming the arrival of a new day and the triumphant return of the heroes. The mages came out near the wall one after another, and some of them even returned to the tower at a fast pace. Similarly, ZHU Meng also returned to the tower. However, his face did not show the excitement of solving the ghost tyrant, but stared at the entire army of undead with a serious face. Because, if Tang Mao's speculation was correct, it meant that the battle would continue. "Mr. Counselor, I'll take you to rest first. You're seriously injured." Staff Officer ZHU called a healing mage over. ZHU Meng waved his hand and said, "No need. I'll wait until the undead fade away before I rest." ZHU Meng ignored Staff Officer ZHU's dissuasion and waited here until dawn. The dark clouds and rain made everything so gloomy, but no matter how gloomy it was, no matter how obscure it was, the night was over. Now it was daytime early morning, and it was time for this war to end. Even the bells had echoed throughout the city, but ZHU Meng saw that the undead had not left. They were still standing there, still with bloody and ferocious eyes. The undead who tried to attack the city wall did not decrease, but became more. Staff Officer ZHU, who was still persuading ZHU Meng to rest, was completely dumbfounded after seeing this scene. This not only Staff Officer ZHU, but also several military commanders, the withdrawn military commanders, and some military magicians were also dumbfounded. The vast undead, like a black tide, were now spreading to the precarious city wall. It was no wonder they were like this, but the dawn was shining, and it was raining continuously. In the past 1,000 years, no undead had ever been seen to appear during the day. How could they not be dumbfounded? Question mark? How is this possible? Military Commander Luzu had just landed on the tower, and his eyes were even full of blood red. His right arm was gone, and blood seeped into the white cloth that had just been simply bandaged. He should have shown an ugly smile, but that smile was hidden in his thin cheekbones, and could no longer be shown. Instead, he was replaced by the panic and disbelief of a nightmare. Chief Instructor Fenijiro, Hunting King Duzaro, and Counselor ZHU Meng, 3 superclass mages were also staring at the land illuminated by the dawn, watching the undead who were safe and sound in the dawn, watching more and more undead who were breaking through the soil against common sense, as if the feast of darkness and blood had just begun. Woo. A death knell-like cry came from the direction of the northern corner of the city. The 4 people looked through the drizzling rain and suddenly found that between the obscure world, a skeleton creature with huge bone wings was flying close to the clouds. Its figure was getting closer and closer, and its bony body was comparable to the main tower standing on the north wall. When the bone wings were fully stretched out, it could cast a large shadow like a cloud. When it looked down on this tiny wall and the tiny people in the city, fear spread like a plague from the wall, spreading wildly across half of the north city. Those who had not had time to migrate and were dissatisfied with the migration were now filled with fear. The Lord of the Underworld, Military Commander Luzu, was shocked for a moment before he uttered its name. With his superclass mage cultivation, he would shudder when he mentioned this name, not to mention others. The Ghost Tyrant is a ghost, the monarch among ghosts. Its appearance must be accompanied by a vast group of ghosts, densely packed. And the Lord of the Underworld is a skeleton, the Lord of Skeletons. This is a super undead whose reputation is even more fierce than the Ghost Tyrant. But who can explain why this thing appeared at dawn? Question mark? Woo. Just as everyone was shocked, another sound came out. After the Lord of the Underworld appeared, a crazy corpse that stood like a mountain appeared without warning at the far end of the vast sea of undead. Every time it took a step, the vibration of the ground was transmitted to the city. The city, as solid as an iron barrel, trembled under its feet. The mountain corpse seemed to be responding to the call of the Lord of the Underworld in the sky. Its body was a sky-high corpse flag. Tens of thousands of undead corpses assembled their bodies and gathered together. Whether they crawled out from the ground or rolled over from the farther north, there were so many that they could cover the distant horizon. Mountain corpse. ZHU Meng was a little shocked. Although he had learned from Tang Mao that the undead might not fade away, he never thought that not only did they not retreat, but these terrifying existences appeared again. The horror of this mountain corpse is completely incomparable to the dead kings of the underworld. He may be from the same era as the totem Black Snake. ZHU Meng still remembers the fear that the Black Snake brought him. Facing the Black Snake, he was powerless to fight. What about the mountain corpse? Question mark? ZHU Meng simply couldn't imagine. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.